Good morning. It is Danger Dan in the Talk Shop. I got a wonderful show for you today. Jeff Milburn, stunt driver extraordinaire, recently in a movie you might have heard of called Ford versus Ferrari. Rode the motorcycle chase last year from the top of America down to the bottom of America. And he's got stories for days. Started sweeping the floors at a body shop. And now he's got one of the raddest shops in DFW. Really fun conversation I had. It's a long one. We had some mishaps. I dropped a microphone at one point. I'm just sitting on it. You can hear the couch squeaking better than you can hear me talking through it. But that didn't stop us. It's a long one. You're going to enjoy this. But before we get into that, dude, I got a race bike that is starting to take shape, which it's about time because the race is like 2 weeks away. Yeah, 2 weeks, and I almost have a roller. That's where I'm at. Tim from Gigacycle Garage sent me the adapter kit to put the Honda front end on the front of this Sportster, and it looks so tough. I'm waiting on an 18-inch wheel from Mr. Cronus out of Kansas. The hard drive guys have got some stuff coming. Thank you, Zombie, Mike, and Anthony. Moosecraft has got the rear swing arm fitted up to get me some more ground clearance. And, Lowbrow and Old Bike Barn, they're going to be coming through with the last clutch needs, whatever I didn't think about. I'm saving, you guys wait. I'm going to need some shit. I'm going to wait till the end till the stuff that I don't plan on needing. Let's get to some dates. March 3rd through the 8th, that's the Mint 400 in Las Vegas. There will also be a Super Hooligan flat track race. March 13th, 14th, and 15th, this Flat Out Friday and Mama Tried in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Texas Time Traveling Choppers Show, which is the show that will be taking the place of Giddy Up, Texas, is March 27th and 28th at the Green Harley Davidson. That is presented to you by Jackson's Choppers. The next weekend, the very following weekend, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th, is the Texas Fandango. That's right. You heard about it last year. Swap meet, chopper show, bike show, flat track races, vintage flat track racing, mini bike racing. Dude, this will be the vinyl release party for the Outbound Train. We cannot wait to bring to you these new records. We're stoked. We are stoked. Al is hand painting all the vinyl jackets. It's going to be rad. I don't know. We might have already sold all of them. You ought to hit up the Outbound Train on Instagram and ask him if there's any left. Ooh, yeah. I don't know. Hit him up. Al, what's up, dude? We have any of those left? We did a pre-sale. I'm not sure what was left because we're only doing, I think, 200 or 250 because that's a lot of art for Al to do. I had to talk him into doing that many. Are you signed up on my Patreon? Are you donating $1 a month? Do you want to win a knife from Nick? Do you want to win a trip to Nepal thanks to Motrcycle Sherpa? Do you want to win gift packages from Lowbrow every month? You got to go to DangerDanceTalkShop.com. There's a Patreon link. Go sign up for as little as $1 a month. You keep this show on the road, and you get a chance at winning badass shit. We give away a knife handmade by Nick every single month. We've been doing this for over 2 years now. It's so rad. Nick has a music segment that you'll hear at the end of this show. He's got some other shit going on. Listen to the end. It's a long show, but it's worth it. Bear and Booty from Motrcycle Sherpa recently gave me a trip to give to one of y'all. One of you can go to Nepal. All you have to do is sign up on Patreon. It'll be at the end of the year. For every month that you're a Patreon member for $5 a month, that gives you a chance at winning a trip to Nepal, thanks to Motrcycle Sherpa. Go to motorcyclesherpa.com and check out all the rad shit that you can do with them. They're motorcycle expeditions. And they're so fucking rad. If you listen to my shows I did last year that document my trip, you will, dude, it's a trip for $5. Somebody's going to be stoked. MCShopTees.com. It's your T-shirt of the month club, the only way to support every local motorcycle shop. That's right, every local motorcycle shop. It's like a magazine subscription, except for you get a T-shirt. That's right. Each T-shirt's got limited art that features a shop that I find from around the country. Each shirt comes with a postcard that tells you about the shop, where they're located, and how you can get a hold of them so that they can help you. These are mom and pop shops that I find while I'm out on the road. People that have helped me out getting from point A to point B. People that keep other folks like you on the road, dude. You got to have people to work on your bike, man. I'm telling you. I know you think you know it all, but you don't. You really fucking don't. Speaking of one of those shops, the first shop I ever featured is Brown Cycles, dude. It's a family-owned and operated business and has been that way since 1970. Red Eye's been there for over 20 years building motors, dude. Like knuckleheads, flatheads, panheads, shovelheads, Sportsters, race motors. He's going to help me fine-tune my race bike. Jake and Scott are both veterans of the Afghan and Iraq war, and they will get you on the road. They will take care of your shit. Brown Cycles has been in business for over 50 years, and they work on everything from knuckleheads to M8s. Service and repair, nothing but quality. Recently, they got a straight shooter alignment tool from Rack and Pull. It's a laser shooting tool that will align your front end, your power plant, your swing arm. Dude, and it will get you going down the road perfectly straight, dude. Take your wheelie machine in and get them to align it for you. They got a large inventory of parts and accessories and service products. 5223 Military Parkway or Brown Cycles on the Instagram. All right. I think I knocked it all out. We're going to be doing some giveaways next week from Lowbrow and a knife made by Nick. The Motrcycle Sherpa trip to Nepal, that will be later this year. I think I knocked it all out of the park a little early this week. But that's good because we got a long show. Jeff Milburn, tell us all about it.
I think my buddy Jeremy listens to him a lot. And when we were working on Ford versus Ferrari, we were working all night. And during the day, we were a couple times we were out in Ontario and we had to go back to LA. He lives in El Segundo. My place is in LA, like by Burbank. And I would call him like, man, I'm falling asleep. He's like, I'm listening to my podcast. I'm like, dude, I fucking can't even stay awake, driving. I was going to talk to you about something, And he's just so into it. It's what keeps him awake,
Dude, I'll get to places sometimes and not want to stop because I'm not done with the podcast. It's like, no, I need to finish this. Just drive around, laps around till I get done. Dude, that's cool. That movie, I woke up at 3 this morning and was like, fuck, I still haven't even watched Ford versus Ferrari. So I went and I watched it before the sun came up this morning.
Oh, really?
And what a great movie.
Oh, man. You liked it? That's cool.
It was so good.
And last night I was the stunt coordinator on it. He and I are buds. We're not like close, like that guy Jeremy and I are close. We're friends, and he was the stunt coordinator on Baby Driver too. And we were talking on the phone last night about different things, and I told him I did an interview or something, and he was talking about some interviews he did. He's like, I can't believe it's just like everybody likes this. It just worked out. He's just so happy that it worked out.
Well, I mean, just like the first few scenes with the dialogue was great. Everything was just really good.
Yeah, I was amazed when I was watching it, and the guy who shot the second unit stuff, which would be the racing stuff, that was all shot second unit. What does
that mean, second unit?
They
do it in 2 units, film the movie?
Yeah, the first unit is all 1 through 10 on the call sheet. All the 1 through, like Matt Damon's number 1, Christian Bale's number 2, the guy who played Remington was number 3. That's how the call sheet goes, right? So first unit is usually all the top part of the call sheet, their scenes, their dialogues, their
Gotcha.
they're up. Then second unit, depending on what the movie is, then they go out and like shoot big wide open shots of the ocean or a ship on the ocean, or in this case racing. So the racing stuff, since
they're not actually driving those vehicles.
Yeah, that's all second unit. Like on Baby Driver, I worked on Baby Driver the whole run of the show. I never saw first unit. Like I was never there because we just were on second unit the whole time out doing the chase scenes and stuff. And very rarely will an actor or actress show up on second unit because they don't need them. That's second unit is all. Sometimes they call it B-roll footage. It's, like if you see a helicopter shot of the downtown or something, or you know what I'm saying, just the stuff that isn't. It's sort of second.
Yeah, the B-roll footage.
Yeah. So the guy who shot second unit of Ford versus Ferrari is, and a lot of the time, second unit directors are stunt coordinators who have become directors because most of the big stunts are all second unit. It's all happens in second unit. And he was the second unit director of Baby Driver. And we had the same stunt coordinator, but the second unit director was an old stunt coordinator. He's not that old, but he's a race car guy. He's a car only guy, really, pretty much. And so that's why Baby Driver looks so cool. But I mean, from Baby Driver to Ford, I don't know where he stepped up his game or it looks so good. Like from my perspective, where I do car commercials and I'm just looking at car footage all the time. We have to go back and go, oh, well, you did this. I'm like, fuck, Darren did such a good job. I mean, I was so impressed with the second unit director, Darren, what he done, because it just looks so good. It just, to me, it's unbelievable how good second unit looks.
Now, did they use what I read about it was they used like replica cars, like with the same drivetrain. Like it wasn't like resto mods made to look like those cars. Did they use all that?
From my perspective, from what I saw, all the cars were made by a couple of kit car companies.
Okay.
They just bought them from them. Then there was a lot of cars that sat like in the shops and stuff that came from either like Shelby's collection, I think, or they were real cars, but they weren't out doing the driving. Everything that had driving done was they came from a couple of different replica car companies that make a body out of fiberglass, that sits on a chassis that they make, and some of them had sort of what the original drivetrain was, and some of them were a little bit more.
Yeah.
Modern.
That seems the more efficient way to go about it.
Like
when I read it, I was like, damn, they were working on these cars the whole time as well as driving
there
them.
was a lot of working going on, but yeah.
I just wanted to double check the audio. We started getting a little bit more excited. Dude, and seeing like, all the old cars in that movie. How did they even fill the streets with old cars like that for a shot? I mean, is it all CGI, or they like really go out and find all those vehicles?
No, and in California, what happens is there's sort of like have you ever heard of central casting or extras? Do you know what an extra is?
Yeah.
Well, there's like I don't know what the exact companies are called. There's central casting that for extras that people who have cool old cars or cool motorcycles. So what happens is, to fill the background stuff, the streets, and I don't know if I'm trying to explain.
No, I see what you're saying. Like people who have these cars, like just like you would go to casting call to be an extra in a movie. They're like, "Hey, look, I've got these vehicles."
Cars? Yeah, and what it is they have their headshots for their cars, if you want to say. And so the production designer, the art department people, I'm not sure exactly who decides. They're like, "Yeah, those cars, as long as they're before 1966 or whatever."
Yeah.
And what happens is those people bring their cars, and they're the ones that just kind of drive around, and they're some of that is B-roll footage or second unit stuff, and they're just back there. In fact, I know a couple of people that were in that. That's what they do out there, and so that's how they fill the streets of those cars.
Because there was a couple of shots where it was just, where they're running through town and there's just old vehicles everywhere.
Yeah, and that movie was filming the same time as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I know they were sharing cars. Like if Once Upon a Time was in Hollywood was filming at night, some of those same cars were on Ford versus Ferrari during the day. There was and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of what in the business we call hero car. There was a lot of hero cars that were specific to the movie, like the station wagon that he drives, and of course the race cars and stuff like that. But those cars are on the run of the movie. You know, there's like an ambulance that was in there, and some other. I'm trying to think of what they were, and I'm having a hard time recalling.
How long ago did you guys shoot that?
It was towards the end of 2018.
Okay.
It was right before. I think my birthday is October 2nd, so I think it happened during my birthday and probably during November, started into December. I can't recall when they started filming because I didn't work on it right at the beginning of filming.
Yeah.
I came in I don't know if it was a week or two later. I know second unit had gone somewhere else, and like I said, I was on first unit. So were you?
When you were a mechanic in the movie, did you do any driving, or was that
no? And
that
well, it's not enough to speak of.
Okay.
Like I was saying, and I don't know if it was part of what we were talking about. I don't know if it was caught before we were doing the podcast or not. The stunt coordinator and I were talking about it last night on the phone, how it became that I was there. Because a couple of buddies of mine, like I say, they're drivers only, kind of like me, and they're like, oh, we're working on this movie that's blah blah this and that, and I'm like, oh man, dang, I want to work on that kind of.
Yeah.
I had a lot of car commercials going on. I mean, anybody, a little bit of you is like, man, they're doing cool stuff, and so I was working on my car commercials and plugging along, and I knew that something was happening, and then I heard that it was the same stunt coordinator from Baby Driver, who, like I said, is a friend of mine, a buddy. I don't know if I'm repeating myself too much. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
And
you call him up. You're like, hey, dude.
No, I didn't. A lot of people would do that. You know?
Yeah.
And I will say, for the record, that's called hustling in our business,
Okay.
and I am not a hustler. Like, I am the worst at it. Because at first I'm like, man, if they don't want to call me, I don't want to bug them.
Yeah.
You don't. And I don't. And people hustle me on the car commercial thing. I'm like, man, I'd call you if I could. And I was, I don't know if your feelings are getting hurt, but you're like, man, I know he doesn't dislike me, and I know I did a good job on Baby Driver. Why is this guy not calling me? And then I heard, oh, it's the same second unit director. And then you're like, wait, and some of these guys on the movie are the same guys. I guess I'm just a loser. You kind of have that thought, but you don't want to say it out loud. So I'm plucking along with my car commercials.
Try not to even think it.
Yeah, you try not to think it, And my buddy Jeremy, he doubled the main guy in Baby Driver. He when he and I talk on the phone, I'm like, oh man, I must, we joke around. I'm like, oh, I must be washed up. And so I remember one of the conversations where he's like, I think I'm going to go work on this. And back then the movie might have, I don't know if it was called, its original name was Go Like Hell, I think, from the book.
Okay.
I think it was called Spoilers for a little while, and I think he was like, I'm going to go work on that racing movie. I'm like, well, I'm washed up. Everybody else is on the movie but me. I'm just
stuck doing commercials.
Yeah, but actually, what's funny is people that work in the movie world, they want to do the commercials, and the people that do the commercials, you're always, if you're on one, you want to be on the other, and you can't do it all. So I tried not to think about it, and I was, do you want me to go into this? I'm
yeah.
I don't want to bore people to death with my,
Fuck 'em.
Yeah. Hope they don't mind. I hope I don't say anything stupid. It's funny, when we started this, I didn't even know we were doing this.
It's perfect.
So I hope I didn't say something stupid or.
I'll let you listen.
Okay, thanks. So everybody's telling me, I'm back to, everybody's telling me. And my buddy, Mike, he's the lead singer of Social Distortion, right? And
okay.
He comes to town, and I remember right about that time, I'm hearing all this stuff, and Mike comes and we go looking at antiques and cars, and we're hanging out, and we go to dinner, and I go to the show, the Social Distortion show that was in Dallas, and I think it was like a Friday night, I think. And while I'm at the show, I'm like, I'm kind of cheering myself up a little bit, hanging out with my buddy Mike, and I think Oliver was there.
Because you really bummed about it.
I was a little bit bummed because,
man.
It happened to be like, probably like Wednesday or Thursday, I'd heard Jeremy's on it, and then my buddy Danny Downey is a really close friend of mine. He's like, man, Milburn, this show would be so perfect for you, Yeah. And I'm like, man, and then, and I'd heard about everybody else that's on it and blah, blah. And so I'm hanging out with Mike and not thinking about it, and then Oliver and I go to the show where Oliver you can't have a bad time around Oliver no matter what happens, and having a good time, and then I see my phone's ringing at the.
Did Oliver notice something was up?
No, he don't pay attention to anything, And I'm like, man, I'm not getting hired for this show. I wouldn't even say that to him because he'd be like, you're an idiot, Milburn, shut up. So my phone rings and it's not a number I know, but I can tell it's an LA number, and I'm thinking, oh shit, this is some work, So I think I did the old, like, I can't talk right now, and then I get the text back that says, this is so-and-so working for Robert Nagel. And I'm like, Nagel's the stunt coordinator of Ford vs. Ferrari. And, I wanted to be like, yeah, I'm screaming. I wanted to, inside, I'm like, oh, thank God I got the call. Like, oh my God, at least I got the call. Because, like I say, I'm just a driver. So a movie that's all this driving stuff, you kind of like, man, shit. And so it said, I think it said, are you available Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And this was a Friday night, right? And, of course, I texted back. Yes, because I didn't even, and then I'm like, oh, where is it? Because I knew some of the second unit was being shot in different places, and I'm standing in Dallas, Texas on a Friday night, and I'm saying yes for Monday morning,
Yeah, I gotta figure out where it is.
I gotta figure out where I gotta be, because I'm.
Is it in Le Mans?
Yeah, is it? Are you shooting in France? Yeah. Shit, I don't know what's going on. So, and I'm a local to LA, because I have a place there, so I have to be there when I have to be there, So she says, Los Angeles, and okay. So I tell Oliver, and I think, now that I think about it, now that you asked the question, I think I told him about this movie. I'm like, oh my God, I got called about this movie. I gotta go to Los Angeles tomorrow or something. He's like, shut up, we're watching the Social D show or whatever. And so I literally like get a plane, because I have a bunch of Southwest miles, and get a plane, get to Los Angeles Sunday. Clean up my motorcycle, get to my garage, clean my motorcycle up, and I'm thinking, man, nobody has called me, and this is the film business hell, that somebody says you're working, and then you don't hear anything from anybody, and they're like, oh, they forgot about me. I'm only going to get 3 days on this whole movie anyway. I'm thinking, I got my helmet and all my driving gear. I'm figuring I'm going to be driving something.
You got to be ready for whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. So I'm getting all my shit ready. I'm like, man, I better get a rental car, because all I have out there is my motorcycle in my garage, and so I can take my gear bag, I have a big gear bag, all my stuff, and go to work, and I get to be Sunday night, and nobody's called me, so I get a hold of the stunt coordinator's assistant, a girl, Tina, her name's Tina Gordon, and I'm like, hey, Tina, what's up? She's like, oh, man, they didn't get back with me. I guess you're not working tomorrow. So, there I'm sitting in my little garage in Silver Lake, staring at my motorcycle on the phone, thinking, oh, I'm not even going to get, hopefully it'll happen Tuesday or Wednesday, And, you're feeling like, I'm washed up again,
Back to that feeling.
Yeah, like, man, I should have stayed in Dallas. I probably turned down some car commercial for this thing or something. So the next day I kind of, change the oil in my motorcycle and do a couple errands, and then I get this call time, and it's a night call time on Tuesday night. So I'm thinking cool, and I get out there, and I get kind of early because I don't know what we're doing, and it was at the Ontario Airport was my first location, and I had no idea what I was doing. I really didn't, and since I'm known to be a driver only, I can barely. I don't know if you noticed this. I can barely walk, because I had a spinal cord injury racing motorcycles, so. I'm figuring I'm just going to be driving something, something little background, because in a couple days I'm not going to be anything important. And I get out there.
Yeah, if it was anything important, you would have known.
Yeah, I would have. Well, I would have been like on this show longer or something. Yeah. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I get out there, get my trailer, meet the second AD, and everybody, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they put me in the same room with Jeremy, because everybody knows Jeremy and I are like, just buddies, and they always stick us in the same room, and everything. And I look at I see that there's a wardrobe hanging up, and I'm like, man, that's a pair of coveralls or something, I don't know. And I asked Jeremy, I think it was Jeremy. I said, man, you got any idea what I'm doing? He says, I think you're pulling a car in the shop. I'm like, oh, I'm pulling a car in the shop, and I don't really understand, but, okay, I guess I'm just thankful that Nagel called me. That I'm thanking God that I'm on this show, and that's what's going to happen. So I put on my wardrobe, which was like work uniform looking thing, if I recall, or coveralls or something. I don't remember what it is. And Jeremy's wearing about the same thing, and we walk down to set, and I see Nagel for the first time. It's the first time maybe the first time I'd seen Nagel since Baby Driver. And I'm like, hey, thanks for having me. He's like, man, really, thanks for coming, Jeff. I really appreciate you. Hold on a second. And he starts in this conversation with the AD and the assistant director and the director and stuff, and they're going on and going on, and they turn around and look at me, and I get this nodding and this okay and all this going on, and I don't know what the hell's going on, and I'm like, well, at least I'm going to drive one of these cars. And then there's this talk about, we're going to have Jeremy push the car and you just sit in it like in the shop. And I'm like, man, this isn't much driving, like I don't even know what's going on. And then Nagel comes over and he kind of explains to me, he's like, here's the deal. We're going to, in a couple days, we're going to start filming up at the Le Mans track, and then we're going to film at the track that's supposedly Daytona. And he's explaining this, and I'm glossing over the facts, or I don't know the facts or the details of it, I should say. These are just the quick facts. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And what's up? And he's like, well, I know you can do pit stops because you did them for a living, And for all those people out there listening, I was a professional race car mechanic, for years.
Yeah, that's kind of, we're going to get there for sure.
So I'm like, okay. And he says, and we went through a lot of looking at people, and I don't know if it was, actors, extras, other stunt guys. And he said, they said they wanted somebody to look like they were from the late 50s, early 60s. And I showed them your picture, and they said, get you here, And I'm like, oh,
nice.
Great. Okay. And, I had to switch gears in my brain, so I'm here to do pit stops.
Yeah, you're an actor now.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, you're going to do pit stops, and we got to play you into this stuff. And the story is that Shelby's crew, these guys have been with him since the 50s. And I was like, okay. And I said, okay, and I had to wrap my brain around this. And I'm like, well, and I want to be like, I do get to drive one of these GT40s in the shop, at least, right? I'm going to drive something because I'm a driver. But, he was really cool, and then he was busy.
Yeah.
And I bumped into the second unit director, and he's like, oh, Jeff, haven't seen you in a while. Hey. And I'm thinking, please, can I come with you guys? But because I didn't know what I was doing, And then Jeremy and I started, we were cracking up and getting along. And there was another stunt guy who's not a driver at all, and he's known for kind of a fight guy, and he's funny as hell. And they had, I guess, shown pictures of him, and he will self-admit he doesn't know how to work on anything. He's not a mechanic or anything. He's not a car guy. And they liked the way he looked. So
he had the look.
So it was he and I was going to do the work, and man, they put him in everything. His name's Frosty. This dude is off the hook funny. He's kind of Oliver funny, can insult anybody and just get away with it. And he's like, man, I guess we're going to be these pit crew guys. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I don't know how to work on anything, And we talk things over. I'm like, maybe we'll have you jack the car up or something, But he's good at kind of acting and stuff. So he and I were in there a lot when we were together. And so things went for a few days, and we were out shooting there was a test track at the Ontario airport that they'd made. That was where it was supposed to be Shelby had, back in the real days, Shelby's days, he had set up in a hangar at LAX. And so there was actually a hangar just like that at Ontario airport. So that's where we shot that, and he had a little test track out there. So we were there nights, shoots forever, And I'll tell you, one that was sort of funny is there's a scene where where Ken Miles wrecks at the test track and blows up and catches on fire.
The one where he dies?
No,
he doesn't? Right there by the
first
hangar.
one, yeah. The one where he dies is a different track we went to. Which there's funny stories about both of those wrecks, because they do that's going to happen, and they have me in the scene. And if you look, I'm handing tools and we're doing stuff and just regular working on the car. And then he goes out and then he wrecks the car. And of course, when he wrecks the car, his crew members are supposed to run out there, and the second AD is like, right, and he's got this great British accent, right, Jeff, you grab this and run out there. And Frosty's like, I can run out there, but Jeff can't run. He can hardly walk. He can't run out there. And he's like, and the first AD is like, what a fuck kind of stunt guy are you? You can't run. And Frosty's like, he's a driver. And he's like, right, we have him to work on the car. Okay, right. He said, you piss off. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, just go away because we can't have you here. Because what are you going to stand there and watch everybody run out there? So that happened, and I didn't, because I couldn't run out there. So that happened. Actually, Jeremy did that crash, and then in the end scene, or towards the end, which is filmed out of sequence, when he crashes the car, the stunt coordinator was out there, and he's like, right, Jeff, you're going to drive the van and drive it out there, because
you can do that?
Yeah, so finally I'm driving something, I'm driving the old van. It's an old Ford van, kind of like, like my Dodge van. So, and if you look in the movie, you can see how stupid I look, because I have to close the doors of the van and try to run around the van and get in the van, and I can hardly walk. And if you look in the movie, like, that guy back there looks like he's got a hell of a limp, and he's trying to get in the van and drive it away. I think they cut the part out where I drive out there, but that was my only driving in the movie.
Did you get to drive a GT40?
No, I didn't drive shit. I tell you, the only driving I did was I was in the driver's seat, and I think Jeremy Fry and Frosty pushed me into the shop, because it's like we're working on the car, and we instead of driving it in, we just pushed it in, and I drove it, but not running. That was the only GT40 driving I did in the whole movie. I was there for 2.5 months or something.
So really, you ended up working that whole time after not even getting a phone call.
That was the killer. Was I get the phone. I finally get a phone call, and it's for 3 days, and then I don't get the first day. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be on it for 2 days, and then I get there, and what was kind of funny is, things happen in the film world. It seemed like a little bit of a bamboozle, because like, you good for 2 days? Yeah. And then Tina's like, well, you're working all next week. I'm like, okay. And then you get to the end of that week, and she's like, you're working all next week. And I'm like, hey, I got to go back and do my car commercials, because I have some obligations. And there was one car commercial that I had to go do. It was a Chevy commercial, and I left to go do it, and I'm like, I have to go do this commercial. It's a Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday. I'll fly back to LA, and I'll be here for Tuesday night, because it was night shoots in. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well,
you guys told me 3 days.
Yeah, by this time I'm like 3 weeks into this. I'm like, I haven't left. It was 3 days, and it turned into 3. And they were so cool about everything. And Nagel was great. If I recall, the conversation was, well, this is some of the scenes from 1958 where you're really supposed to be in it. So I left, and then they did some of those fire scenes, where he catches on fire. And when I come back, Nagel's like, we have to make sure you are in these shots that we're doing this, because they only shot it for 2 days. That 58 stuff where Shelby's driving. So if you see in the movie, literally Nagel took me.
Oh, at the very beginning, when
they took me and made me stand like right in the middle where the camera's like looking right at me. So I'm in that shot so that it can put me together of being with him the whole time.
Through the whole.
Yeah. So
okay.
And it's kind of funny, because like the opening scene, and when Oliver and I went and saw the movie, he's like, "You're right in the middle." Like, man, Nagel told me to stand right in the middle so that the camera. There's no way the camera couldn't see me in the shot.
That's awesome.
So
what's funny is the picture you posted, you're like looking up from working on a tire.
Yeah.
Well, then I saw way better pictures of you on. I was like, that's the screenshot he decided to take was right there.
Yeah. Well, it was, I don't know. I tell you, it was that I'm not very good at social media, so but that was a picture that Victoria had gotten, I guess, or something somehow. And I thought it was cool because I was actually doing the pits.
Working on the
I
car.
did so many pit stops. It got to the point where it's like, man, I can't believe it. And I could believe it, because it's the film world. You do everything for one shot. You do it 100 times. But there were some of those nights that I was, and during the Daytona race, which I don't even think you can see me doing the pit stops in the Daytona race.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm there. If you look you can see the top of my head, because they just use different angles. But man, I bet during the Daytona race, I felt like I changed those tires like 100 times, and then, and back then you used the lead hammer to knock the knockoffs off the wheel, and I am not
You're
the most
better shape
athletic
now,
dude.
huh?
Yeah, like, man, I had an impact. I had an air operated impact to take tires off when I was doing this professionally. I'm over here with a hammer, but I got very efficient at it. And then the rain scenes, because the Le Mans, there was during the 66 race, and they made it rain up there where they built that Le Mans track. And I'd say 2 straight weeks. We filmed that at night from 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock.
Just
at night.
doing the rain scenes.
The rain,
for 2 weeks?
the rain scenes of the pit stops. Like,
just
there was
pit
rain scenes of other stuff. Yeah, just those pit stops. And I remember we did it for 2 weeks, and then there was that would be Monday through Friday night shoots, because they shot the night stuff from 7 till 10 because they had to be out. They couldn't make the noise after 10 o'clock. So that was 3 hours a night for 2 weeks. We did those rain scenes, the night stuff. We also did the day stuff, the pit stops during the day, during that. And I remember when our little pit stall was pretty small, because it was all built to scale. I remember when we started like the 3rd week at the Le Mans track. It was built in California at the set, which was amazing. Christian Bale came up, and 7 o'clock came, and they... Sorry, noise going on in the shop. 7 o'clock came around, and that was when the night, and all of a sudden we saw the condors for the rain come out. And I asked the AD, I'm like, man, we are not about to do more rain pit stops, are we? He said, in some British accent, we sure are, Jeff, And I'm like, we just did 2 weeks of this. We're going to keep doing these rain pit stops forever. And I'm not complaining, but I'm just thinking,
surely you can get it by now.
But they had to shoot everything. They're shooting Ferrari in his box, but we still had to do the stuff. And is that noise killing you?
It's pretty. It's gone.
It is.
Perfect.
Sort of gone. There's work going on in the shop as we speak.
Somebody's got to work. Right?
Yeah, well, we're over here talking about...
So tell me about the pit stops before, like when you're doing this for a living.
When I was doing it for a living?
Yeah. Because
I
I'd heard you race motorcycles, but I didn't know you were fucking pit crew like NASCAR?
Yeah, NASCAR Craftsman trucks. That was a lead-in series to the big NASCAR series. But my... Maybe the air blowing. I wonder what he's blowing off down there.
There's a lot of dust on it, or
I don't
shavings,
know.
or something, dude.
For the love of God, stop blowing things, Randy Del Greco. So, I started my career sweeping the floor in a body shop, right? And then I was a mechanic in a...
Here in Dallas?
Washington, D.C. I worked at a dealership in Washington, D.C. I was from Odessa. The body shop I worked at was in Odessa. Ended up going up to Washington, D.C. and working at a Dodge dealership. Is that killing you?
It's pretty loud. I don't know.
You want to hold on for a second?
It's not near as bad as we think it is.
It's just we can hear it really big time.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think Del Greco blew things off that much.
When we're doing podcasts, he does.
Yeah, and in a minute he'll start grinding on things, and I'll be like, man, he's getting some work done down there. Maybe he's doing it just for a joke. Like, I know they're up there making noise. Do you want to hold off?
No, I think we just go. We're fine. It's really not that bad.
It's part of the...
Dude, we're good. I'm going to make people listen to it anyways.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, that's almost like comical right there. Well, watch. We'll be quiet. Okay, we'll just... I don't even know what is so big
I
that
can't
he's
see
blowing.
through the square glass over here.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder what's so...
what do you got him working on?
I think he's just bolting some things on the front.
It doesn't look like he's bolting anything right now.
I know. All that stuff should be cleaned and painted already. I don't know. Is he putting stuff on the front of a motor that we put together? I think it's Murphy's Law.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he'd be outside smoking a cigarette right now if we weren't doing this podcast. So, okay, where were we?
You grew up in Odessa,
Odessa,
Texas.
Texas.
At a body shop.
Yeah, sweeping the floors at the body shop. I like to throw that in there because didn't come from rich parents, or a lot of kids in racing, they had rich parents. So I had a little off-road dune buggy, race buggy that I pieced together with another guy. We didn't have any money to do shit, so I'll skip you through that. So I tried to do that, work all night long and we ran a couple races, but I didn't even own a vehicle to get it to the races. I had to borrow a pickup truck and a trailer from my stepdad. So
racing is expensive. Even if you do piece something together, that's only
I had a race buggy, an off-road race buggy that was third hand by the time I had it. But just getting it to the races was killing me,
Yeah.
So so I tried, my hand at racing motocross stuff a little bit, but I had to get on with life because I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid.
So you did race a little motocross out there in West Texas?
I had a motocross bike. I didn't really get. I didn't get far enough along to. I won't claim it as anything big. Okay.
What kind of bike was it?
It was a KX. It was a K. I can't even remember. I had this thing that was a Yamaha DT 100, which is an enduro bike.
Yeah.
That was my stepdad actually had bought that for me. I think like my 13th birthday. And that was how I was to get to school because he didn't want to have to take me to school. But glossing over all that BS, and I had the off-road race car that I tried to do something with, and a buddy of mine worked at a Volkswagen dealer, and you could still get air-cooled Volkswagen parts in 1982 and 83 at a dealer. So we, with junkyard stuff, put that thing together and didn't get very far. And like I was saying, I got to being about 18 years old, and I knew that none of that was happening.
Yeah.
So I ended up with a job. I worked at a body shop in D.C. for a minute.
How'd you get from Odessa to D.C.?
My dad lived in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I actually was born in Washington, D.C., but my mom had moved to Texas, and I grew up in West Texas. And somewhere I didn't have any money or anything. I had some tools, and my dad said something to like, you can come up here and get a job up here if you want, and you have to pay me rent. I could live with him, I think, for 3 months was the deal, and then I had to pay rent. So I lived with him for 3 months and moved out, of course. When you're like 19, like the last thing you want to do is live with your parents. Meeting cute punk rock girls.
Especially you're gonna have to pay him.
Yeah. I think that I'm glad he was like that, though. So I got this job at this one body shop. I think I worked there for maybe a year, and then I just clapped my hands. That might have screwed you up. And then I ended up with an apprenticeship sort of thing, because back then you had to be an apprentice. You didn't go to trade school or something, just apprentice. So I got my apprenticeship kind of situated at this Dodge dealership. Worked for this guy named Mark Piles. And, buying my tools, and I couldn't race anything.
Was that just like because you had experience? You really were you looking far ahead? Like you wanted to make something of being a mechanic? Did you have dreams of because I was thinking, like, everybody wants to be a stunt driver when they're a kid, and then that dream just, like, disappears.
Yeah. Let's say when I was in high school and I was trying to build that race buggy, and I had my motocross bike stuff, that stuff, I thought to myself, and I think I've said this in an interview here or there, that I'm going to race for a living. I'm going to be a professional something with racing. And then the reality is my parents weren't filthy rich, and they couldn't put me through everything that it would take to do that, which back then you could still kind of make something of your own. And I wanted to do something like that. And I've said it before, I kind of started seeing the guys that were building the race cars. I started feeling a little more like, man, those are the guys they're the smart guys.
Yeah,
the other guys have the guts, and I guess some whatever, which I'm not short on that. I'm not scared of anything, actually. Which is not good, but you get in positions where you're like, whoa, that was close, but I always feel I got it handled. So I guess I have a little bit of that, but I really like the building of cars, motorcycles, and all that. But what I realized when I was 19, 18, he's going to blow on that for like an hour and a half. So I realized, like, man, I got to make a living, and I have to. So I got a job in the dealership, and I really liked it, and I had this little bit of aspirations, like maybe I can work at this Dodge dealership, and maybe I get a job at a Porsche dealership, and maybe I can get a job on a race car team. I didn't know what the hell I was. Is reality when you're 19. You just have to make a living, and in that
it was in the right direction.
Yeah, I was heading in the right direction. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I wasn't being very good at it. Sorry.
It's kind of like a pun there.
Yeah, I really didn't want to do anything else. I couldn't. I didn't want to be a rock star. I couldn't play an instrument or anything.
You see what's happening back there when it came to music. Man.
It was. Every weekend you could see something like the Bad Brains or something, but yeah, definitely. I just kept plugging along at things, and as I did that stuff, I wanted to get out of DC and get back to Texas. So it was kind of, and DC was expensive at the time for me, and for everybody really, because it's kind of an expensive place to live. And I ended up getting a part-time job at a motorcycle shop, which had been called Satan Cycles, that's where my van came from, right? So I'm working at this motorcycle shop and working during the day, and I.
So did you like the apprenticeship? Like go back to that.
So
I'm
sorry.
Finish that? Like did you become?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't. All that air blowing got me off the apprenticeship thing. So yeah, I worked for this guy Mark, and he told me, he said, look, since you've worked in the body shop and you have the years behind you to be ASE certified, automotive service excellence, you have to have 2 years. We have to kind of sign off on that to take your test. He said, I'm going to write off a year or a year and a half at least, because you were in the body shop that long, come work with me in the dealership. And I did. The guy tried to get me a raise my first day there, so it was pretty cool. He promised me that I could go off and start to be a line mechanic after 6 months because of my year and a half or so at the body shop. And so after 6 months, I bet to the day, I walked up to him and I'm like, hey, can I be a full-on line mechanic, make my own money? And he said, yeah, I promised you and you did good. So yeah, and so I did that. I took my ASE tests. I think I failed the first time I took one. I'm not good at taking tests. And then I took my test and I got certified and I became my own mechanic. And as I was saying, I was working there buying my tools. I mean, literally I was probably bringing home $250 a week. This was in the 80s, the early 80s. And I was spending $60 a week on tools.
Yeah.
$20 at each tool truck. I mean, I was not killing it when it came to money back then, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to get a part-time job because back then I think I was.
You had to get a part-time job on top of working at the dealership?
Yeah. That's how I got the job at
the motorcycle shop.
At the place that was Satan Cycles. Yeah, it was actually they had to change their name to MDO Cycles because something about the phone book didn't like Satan Cycles or somebody.
Because of the phone book?
Yeah, back, the yellow pages. In the 80s, there was the yellow pages for all you people out there.
Who was that guy that owns Satan Cycles? What was he like?
Like a cartoon character. His name was Ed Miller, and he had gotten out of the Navy, I think, in the late 60s. He was drafted, went in the Navy. I think he was did fix something electronic on helicopters or airplanes or who knows, or ships, or he did something with his hands, electronic thing, if I recall right. I don't want to misquote what he is, but I'm making it up kind of as I go from what I recall. He had a best friend who I'm still friends with to this day. His name was Darrow Dudley, who I think was a mechanic at probably a gas station or something, I don't know. And then he had a girlfriend who her name was Maureen, who was the hottest girl on the planet back then, and still is to this day. She's just the coolest chick. She worked at the Harley dealer at the parts department. Somehow Ed made a deal with some guys who, imagine in somewhere around 68, 70, in that neighborhood, I don't remember what year it was, some guys that had a motorcycle junkyard. I mean, if you close your eyes and think about it, what would be in a motorcycle junkyard in 1970? Yeah, you know what I mean? Late 60s, 70s. I mean, we're talking cool stuff, right?
Yeah,
so
cool stuff.
Yeah, but it was, then it was nothing. It was all war, after. So Ed makes some deal with these guys. I don't know how all this goes down, and he buys their junkyard.
The whole junkyard.
Yeah, and what it was. And I might be not 100% sure on how this goes down. He buys this junkyard from this, and this guy Ed is crazy. I mean, he's just, right out of the military. He's the chopper. He's what chopper dudes want to be. You know what I mean? This guy is the real deal, right?
I mean, that's why I'm asking this question.
I have a picture of it.
Names the place
Satan Cycles, right?
Come on.
Yeah. So he gets this, and he has his girlfriend who is working at the Harley dealership as a parts girl.
Working for the Moco.
Yeah, and his best buddy, whose nickname now is Wilbur, because Ed is Ed, and there used to be this show, Mr. Ed, the horse, and his friend Wilbur.
Yeah.
So Darrow Dudley's name to everybody is Wilbur. So Wilbur's a mechanic at, who knows, some car place, because Wilbur was I think he was a car mechanic at the time, maybe. I knew he liked a BMW motorcycle, so I don't know where he worked. So Ed starts this place, and he doesn't want to leave it the same name. And I think how it went was he needed to move the parts from where they were to his new shop that he's starting with no money. I don't even know how he did this. I think he might have worked at that place and then bought it from them and then moved.
Worked at the junkyard?
Yeah, at the junkyard. And I think that's how the van came about. So he buys the van used because it had been a work van in D.C. And he buys this van to move the parts. I think, I'm not sure. Moves all the parts, and he needs to name this place, so Ed comes up with the name Satan Cycles. And I think Satan Cycles came about 1970, I think. And so there's Ed, his girlfriend, Maureen, who probably was 19 years old and just a babe, you know. I mean, I have a picture of her over there. She's wearing, you probably saw it, she's wearing like white go-go boots, you know. I mean, this girl is hot,
wow,
you know.
yeah.
And then his best friend who's this mechanic, and Ed, I think Ed painted and did some other stuff, but you know, he's in the military, he's really good at electrical stuff, if I remember it. So the three of them start down the path of working on choppers, and they can make choppers because they have all this stuff. You know,
yeah, and like it sounds like he made this deal like right as Easy Rider just came out
in
in '69, like a giant commercial for choppers for him.
And I think the guys that sold the place, you know, they're like selling things to guys that had come back from the war that still had their motorcycle. You know, they're like selling generators, or you know, they're just selling parts. Who knows? I don't think they had the foresight to think that this stuff is all going to be like gold in a minute. And Ed has all these frames and front ends and gets deals with, you know, CCI and James Gas, all these places that are just coming around Pkwy, or if I said it right, and all those. And so Ed starts making deals, and he's in Washington, D.C., and there's guys getting out of the military. They're coming back from Vietnam. You know, they're getting let out of, I think it's Walter Reed. You know, you get hurt, you go to Walter Reed, you know, you get injured. And, you know, he's got all these guys right out of the military. They want choppers. He's building. I mean, he's just making something of himself, and he's a businessman. There's no doubt about it. But he's like a cartoon character. You know, he's makes funny noises, and you know, he's just the weirdest guy in the world. You know, and he probably was. I know he did all kinds of drugs, but he got off of them, which I think made him even crazier because now he thinks everybody else is stupid because they're like, you know, and
he's got to figure it out.
Yeah. And what's funny is, you know, I never smoked weed or did any drugs, and so Ed and I got along great. And Maureen, I would go up there they had to change their name to MDO, which was his last name was Miller, and Darrow Dudley was D, and Maureen's name was Orman, I think, is her original maiden name. So it was MDO Cycle. They used their initials, and I'd go up there. And I'd buy stuff for my bike, you know.
Yeah, what were you riding?
I still have it, my '74 Sportster.
Oh, sick.
That's what I rode to work every day.
Like the late '70s?
No. For me, it was mid '80s.
Okay.
Like '85 or so, I think. Yeah. By the time I had actually gone to Satan Cycles with my dad because my dad had a Sportster, and he would buy stuff from them. And I remember in the I guess late '70s. My dad and I would go up there, and he'd buy stuff, and I remember there was this cool chick behind the counter, you know, because she was, and I remember the place, like, you know, I remember as a kid, what the place was like, and they had stuff hanging on the wall. I mean, they had it going on, you know, this place was just as cool as it could get, you know what I mean? And my dad would go up there and buy stuff, and he had a couple friends that had motorcycles, so he, you know, I'd been in the place, and then once I started riding a motorcycle, my dad really wasn't riding motorcycles like he did. You know, I'd go up there and I'd deal with her. And I remember one day, I got off work and rode up there to buy something for my bike because I had a Sportster back then. I still have it.
You were riding it every day back then?
That's all I had to get around.
That's all you had. I
didn't have a car, man.
Definitely going to a motorcycle shop.
Yeah, my '74 Sportster needed a lot of work. I mean, I bought it I bought that bike from a guy who rode it off a pier into a river.
Come on.
Yeah, and he, I think his friend got it out, and he's like, I don't want that bike anymore. And his friend sold it to me, like out of the river. He had drained it all out and got it started, but that's how I bought the bike. And so I had a lot of work to do, you know. And I would go up there, and Maureen, I mean, bless her heart, if you want to say it like that. She just one day, and imagine this here for a visual. These are all bikers. I mean, you know, they're bikers. They're bikers. And now what I looked like from 1982 on was I looked like I stepped out of, an Elvis Presley movie or something, or a Stray Cats video. I had greasy hair, a leather jacket, short, clean shaven. Well, I didn't like I needed to shave then, and my bike looked like it came from the 50s. It was not a chopper looking thing, And so I walk in there, and so they start to be like, Elvis is here. He wants to, buy something, So they just, like, right away, I had this nickname of Elvis from them, and then they would start, like, they'd call me EP, like, for Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And I'd go in and buy stuff. And, I didn't look like these people at all. We looked like we came from, 20 years apart from each other. But Maureen just, I guess she just...
Girls like Elvis.
Man, I'm telling you. she was so cool to me. Like, she was the coolest thing ever. And she'd just be like, she would tell me, she's like, you just come back here and talk to me. We'll take care of things, And every time I needed something, she would just make sure I had it, make sure. And then one day she says, I must have probably made some comment like, man, this motorcycle is killing me with these parts. Just spending money. So she's like, yeah, why don't you come work here? And I'm like, what do you mean? I have a job at the Dodge dealership. She's like, when you get off work, come up here, and because they were open late 3 days a week and on Saturday. And it worked out for me because then I could afford to, and then that was when I found my FLH and I bought my big bike, and she just let me come work there, and I was...
What were you doing for her?
Whatever.
Yeah. Back to sweeping floors again?
Just about, I was a big time line mechanic during the day, and I was whatever Maureen told me to do at night. I would help customers. I changed a lot of tires because I think they had some policy if you bought a tire, they'd install it for you.
So this is late 80s, mid 80s.
Mid 80s.
Evo just came out.
But those weren't coming into this shop.
That's right.
This shop is not
at that point.
Yeah, these things were brand new.
So you guys still working on choppers back then, like custom choppers?
A lot of chopper
Keeping
stuff.
The old shovel heads on the road?
And some people had some, like panhead original equipment stuff. And my bike was a hand shift. I recall one time this biker guy had bought himself something that was a hand shift bike. I don't know I don't remember what it was. It could have been a panhead or a knucklehead or something. And he came to pick it up, and he was kind of looking a little nervous. And I remember one of the guys that worked there was like, you want me to get Elvis out here and show you how to ride this? And that didn't go over very good, because I was like maybe 19 and I looked like I was 16, and this big biker dude is like, fucking, kid looks like a greasy haired kid telling me what to do. And he jumps on his bike and literally stepped on the clutch right into the wall.
Oh my!
I'm like, oh my God, he crashed it. Like, oh my God. I remember like, he needs a ride home now because he's.
Oh my God, we still got to work on his bike.
Yeah, but I used to test drive a lot of bikes. That was one of my jobs, actually. Like, they would do something to bike. Like, let's go ride this thing around for a little while and see if something falls off of it.
Stunt driving career.
I don't know. I didn't think about it that way.
You go try this
And they would give me these terribly dangerous choppers to ride. I'm like, man, I don't want to ride this thing. Doesn't have a front brake, Yeah. And so I change batteries here and there, change tires. I felt like I changed a million tires. What kind of tire machine were you working back then? Like, it was manual. No, it was it had a clamp. You could clamp the tire down.
You use the bars and the points.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh Jesus. And and that's why I did those tires, because they didn't want to. Ed and Wilbur didn't want to do them tires. It was all manual. And Ed, I remember that was when I learned about rubber glide, which is this shit you spray on tires. And Ed would make all these off. It was a Ruglide all day long. He would make these off-camera jokes about. He'd be like, "God damn it, Elvis! The more lube, the better. You're gonna learn this in life. You need to lube that thing up, man." He would just make these jokes about, the more lube, the better. And I'm like, man, I'm just a dumb 19-year-old kid. I'm like pouring this Ruglide all over. It'd be all over me and the tire machine. I'd be slipping and falling down. And if anything needed to be polished, I remember they'd make me polish it with the polish.
Yeah, you got all the dirty.
Oh yeah, I didn't do anything cool. I think once I put a primary chain on once. I think I don't think I did anything really that cool. I think mostly I was there for Maureen's entertainment. I think Maureen just liked having me around. There was somebody that could change a tire or go right. Because some customer would come in and, oh, that bike, nobody test drove that bike yet. Elvis, go test drive that bike. And back then there was no cell phones. If that shit broke down, I'd have to walk back to the shop. And I'd have to walk back. And I mean, that shit would happen. I would go drive some bike and some shit would fall off of it. And I'd be out there kicking it half to death in the summer. I'd be up dead and I'd walk back and then I'd have to get the van, which I have now, drive down there and I'd put the bike in the back of the van myself. When I think about it, I mean, I probably didn't weigh 135 pounds and I'm trying to put some panhead in the back of that van, and nobody, there was no respect for Elvis.
Oh, dude, they loved having you around.
I did all that dumb work, And while Wilbur built a lot of motors and Maureen would take care of the customers, and I don't know, that's what I did at Satan Cycles. And I never thought I was going to be a stunt driver. Yeah, I mean, I was happy to be working and when I moved back to Texas, what happened was I had my shovel head, my 71, and I had that Sportster. And the Sportster I had showed it a lot, so it was really nice. And mind you, this was when I moved back here in late '88, I think, and the Sportster was, I mean, it was a show bike. Everything was perfect on it, and so you
did that too, after you got the shovel head, started riding the shovel head?
Once I started riding the shovel head, I actually got hit on the Sportster, so I had to fix it anyway, so I just took it completely apart. And the procedure back then, everything got chrome plated. Everything got, if I got a chrome plated, the foot pegs, you know what I mean? You can't chrome plate rubber. So it all got chrome plated. I painted it myself. I hand lettered it myself, which the first one wasn't great. And I showed it, and I got a bunch of trophies. I showed it around the East Coast, Baltimore, D.C., Richmond, up and down the East Coast a little bit. And then when I came back to Texas, I rode my shovel head back here first, got the job at the dealership, went back and got my motorcycle, my toolbox. And what happened was, this literally was how I led into stunt driving. And mind you, this is a long time ago and it wasn't full time. I would get a call and somebody'd say, hey, we want a really cool motorcycle for a photo shoot. And I guess because I was, knew people downtown and stuff.
This is back in Dallas?
This was in Dallas when I came back to Dallas. And so somebody would hire me to bring my motorcycle, and some hot girl would, sit there modeling something, whatever, for,
for what?
J.C. Penney's, Neiman Marcus, things like that. They do a lot of photo shoots in Texas because, it's a right-to-work state. And they just do a lot of ad photo work stuff. And so these art directors in the photo world would call me up and say, hey, can we use your motorcycle? Because think about it, in the late 80s.
Motorcycles were hot back then.
Yeah, something that looked good and wasn't like a beat-up chopper. It was the beginning of they were still cool and not like every rich guy didn't have a motorcycle that said so it was kind of it was like that jumping point of, I don't know.
It was bridging over. It's becoming more acceptable.
Exactly. So they would use my motorcycles, and then somewhere along the line, there was this show, and they wanted a motorcycle to ride into a nightclub. There was people dancing on the dance floor of the nightclub. There was supposed to be a girl on the back of the motorcycle. The motorcycle stops. The girl gets off. She dances around the motorcycle. The guy on the motorcycle rides. The crowd parts. The guy rides out. So mind you, this is not a big budget thing or whatever. And the art director's like, "Can you do this?" And whoever was the producer, director, people, or whatever, like, "Yeah, we'll use this guy that owns the motorcycle if he can do it." I'm like, "Yeah, I can do it. I'll ride in." This girl gets off. I remember she was a dancer. She had been on stage in life, I'm sure, with a pole.
Okay.
And she gets off and does this dancing around, and I ride off, and they put me in my wardrobe costume, and I was like, it's funny because it was sort of like late Elvis looking stuff, like gold and fringe, and they did my hair up, and I ride my Sportster in. The girl gets off, dances around, I part the crowd, I leave. I guess somebody was happy with me doing that, and I got another call to do another thing like that. But I'm pretty busy working at the dealership, and right in this neighborhood time, I got my first job as a mechanic on a race car team.
Dude, nailed it.
Yeah, so I'm not thinking much about this. I recall when they said that what they were going to pay me, I'm like, you're really going to pay me that much money
just to
ride the motorcycle with this pretty hot girl on the back? You realize that the reason I have a motorcycle from the beginning is to get hot girls on the back. I was spending money. You know, now you're going to pay me. And they're like, yeah. And I think they gave me like $175. And that included rehearsal day because I had to rehearse one day and come back. But that seemed like a lot of money in late 80s.
To ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, and they fed you, you know, and there was a lot of other cute girls around. So I thought this is a kind of a cool industry.
Yeah.
You know? And so I did that, but what happened was I ended up getting a job on a really big race car team, a Top Fuel team. If you know what Top Fuel cars are, you know, drag race.
Got it, Ennis?
Well, I mean, that's where they race, yeah. But this team, what's funny, I was working at a Dodge dealership, was sponsored by Mopar, by the Chrysler Corporation. The driver, his name was Gene Snow, kind of a very kind of eccentric, kind of not my kind of guy. But I ended up getting the job. Somebody had put me up for that. I ended up getting it. I think how I'd gotten it was somebody had seen my shovel head and thought that I did a lot of nice work on the shovel head, and then it just kind of morphed. Oh, my roommates worked at Big D Cycle, which is a Triumph place. And they were heavy in racing, Bonneville racing stuff, and then they gave me they introduced me to some people and opened a door here and there, and then I ended up quitting the dealership, and literally I took a 1/2 pay cut to go work on race cars. And man, I remember telling my dad that, you know, I mean, my dad really, he didn't even live in the same city. I'm like, yeah, I got a job on a race car team, and my dad was like, they don't pay people to work on race car teams. I'm like, yeah, no, they actually do, you know, and he's like, oh, really, you know, you making good money? I'm like, oh, about half. You know,
About working on a race car team.
Yeah, and my dad's like, "That's stupid. You know, what do you need? You got benefits?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?"
No, we work twice as much too.
Twice. I mean, I went from half pay to working 7 days a week. You know, 12 to 15 hours a day. And then I remember telling my mom, she was like, "That's dumb. Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "No, man, I thought this was the coolest thing in the world." And by that time, I had saved my money. And I had bought that first little building over in Oak Cliff, which was, everybody made fun of that, which I don't even know how I afforded that. So I had this very small building, a little 800 square foot building, and I moved my big toolbox over there and took my smaller toolbox that was there to the race shop, which was in Fort Worth, and drove back and forth every day in my hot rod truck, which was getting like 6 miles to the gallon at best. You know, as I was spending money on gas, and then we, you know, got off and I started, I guess I was doing pretty good. I think I really cared about it a lot, you know, and it was a lot of work, and I really wanted to make it work. I really wanted to be a race car mechanic.
So, like, when you get hired on, are you, like, just part of the team? There's, like, a head mechanic that you're working with?
A crew chief, yeah. And what happened was I got brought out to the shop, and they wanted to see kind of, like, what they thought I'd be good at. It's sort of like they want to see if I would even be good enough. They kind of a little trial period thing.
Well, see, I imagine like how you mix with the other guys that are already there. Like that's
because everybody's working together.
Anything.
Yeah,
and we'll teach you most of this shit, but can you work with these other guys?
And I'll tell you, at that time, that was I think it was 91, 92, early 92 maybe. I don't recall. It was between the race season, so what the race season hadn't started in 92, whatever it was. 95% of the race car mechanics that were in the NHRA, the top, I mean, that's the top level of drag racing. I would say at least that many, their dads were racers, you know, and they were grandfathered in, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah.
And then I'm this kid that was working at a dealership riding an old motorcycle and had a hot rod truck that's trying to get my way in, you know.
Being an extra in the movies.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, I gotta figure out some way to prove to these people that I'm going to do good work.
Yeah.
So I was a dealership mechanic, you know, and to them they're like, yeah, you're a dealership mechanic, but we're working on cars that are going 280, 90 miles an hour, you know, 4+ seconds or whatever. You can't screw up.
Everything they taught you at the dealership, we don't do any of that.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, you say that. You know, it's funny. You know, they kind of said that, but later on, I learned that, you know what? It's all if it's your mindset. You know, like if you want to do good work, you're going to do good work, and it's mechanical. It's an internal combustion engine. You know, it's just a little bit. So I went there and I tried to do, you know, good work, and I remember the first few days when I was kind of like my little trial period, I clean. They don't have transmissions. They have these things called reversers. It's because you're either in forward gear or reverse gear to back up for. So I took the reverser and I polished it when I didn't have something else to do, And I remember Snow.
Oh, you mean you decided to do something that didn't need to be
Yeah,
done?
and I remember Snow walked up, and I think I polished one and was polishing another one because there was three of them, and they had by that time realized that my job was going to be something to do with the clutch, which was kind of weird to put me in that position because that was kind of one of the more important.
Right?
Yeah. So I was messing with it, and I remember Snow, he was a driver owner. He walked by, he's like, I've been racing since the 60s or maybe 50s, I don't know what the hell he said, And he's like, I've never had my transmission or reverser look that nice. He's like, look at that. It looks like a showpiece,
That's cool.
And I'm like, okay, cool, thanks. And then I remember they had me do cylinder heads. And what's funny is I had, when you do cylinder heads in a dealership, it's not so like precise race setup. You do what you do. Yeah. But I remember they were like, hey, you can do cylinder heads. I'm like, yeah, I can do cylinder heads. And then I realized, man, I got to, do valve heights and springs and all this stuff. And I called a buddy of mine that was a machinist at Big D, and I asked him a couple questions, and I just started doing them. And I mean, I don't really think I was faking it, but I guess I had the knowledge. I just did it, and they were pretty happy with the way I built the cylinder heads, which was nice. So I guess
that's a pretty important part of the car, right there.
Yeah, I mean, so I did it, and I'm the kind of guy when I work, I lay my tools out, and they saw that, and I think that helped. So they hired me. I quit my job at the dealership, like I said, moved my stuff over there, and I went to work on a Top Fuel team. I ended up leaving that one and kind of going with a crew chief to another one. And then that disbanded. I ended up working on a funny car team for a year. And then I didn't know what I was doing because it was kind of hard. That first thing, things happen so quick. You're on one team and then they're not going to race anymore. And then you go with one guy to another team, and you kind of hang with the crew chief and it was kind of a world that I had to I was thrown into. My dad wasn't in it. My grandfather wasn't in it. I'm trying to hang on for dear life with it. And I ended up working on this one team for some years that they had the people who owned the team owned a place called Vehicle Testing Service, which I fit in great down there because those guys were testing new vehicles, and I had been a Chrysler mechanic, and they actually started putting me to work during the off season doing drivability stuff and stuff that I had done. So I fit in really great with them. I'm still close friends with them, the driver and everything.
So this was in the 90s?
Yeah.
So back in the 90s, my dad worked for a guy named Buzz Post. He was racing, I think, pro stock cars. We used to go out to Ennis all the time. He would, I was in the pit. I would just remember, just hearing those cars go by, the jet cars at the end of the night. I was really young, and that place was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that was our home.
Cool.
That was our home track.
There.
Yeah, I was there doing the clutch. I mean, you know what you're not ready for if you hadn't been a professional race car mechanic and you hadn't grown up that way. What I wasn't really ready for, and I mean, it wasn't that I didn't handle it. I just didn't know what it was going to be like. Was the traveling? Was once the season starts, you're in the 18-wheeler, and that was another thing that I think I had a little bit of a leg up on, which actually worked into my stunt driving stuff because my stepdad, who worked in the oil field, had trucks and trailers in a yard, and they took things to oil refiners. I knew how to drive trucks and trailers, and right around that time, 91, 92, the federal government said you had to have a commercial driver's license to drive an 18-wheeler. Snow came down, is like, which one of you guys want to go get a commercial driver's license? Because you guys got to drive the 18-wheeler across the country. And I was like, I'll get it, no problem. And I think I realized that makes me worth something because I'm the low man on the totem pole. Yeah. Sorry.
But they need you to get everything to the next spot.
So I went and sorry, the phone ringing. I went and
CDL.
I went and got a CDL. I took it and got it on my first try, and that made me a little bit worth something to a race team. So I hung in there with that. But then I'm driving this 18-wheeler all across the country, which I'd never, driven all across the country in an 18-wheeler, parking in truck stops. And then you get to the race, and it's a motherfucker to park. NHRA didn't do the way NASCAR does. You just, whenever you got there, then you had to go park in your spot. And if you're like number 4 in the points and number 2 is already there, number 5 is there, you just barely have enough room to sneak in there, and then number 3 is getting there in the points, and you're trying to put it, and you start to really learn how to maneuver an 18-wheeler in tight spots, which has worked to my advantage as being a stunt driver because I do a lot of big truck stunts. But so that all worked pretty good for me, that stuff. And I really liked being a clutch guy. I ended up working in a chassis shop and learning a lot about fabricating, because what I learned before that in fabricating, I was all self-taught, man. I was just self-teaching myself, but I learned from a guy named Gene Gaddy who had built a lot of top fuel cars, and he taught me a lot. He really did teach me a lot, and
that was in Fort Worth, or
Gene Snow, the guy who drove that one top fuel, he was from Fort Worth. That was where our shop was there. Vehicle testing service was in San Antonio.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a lot of race car teams from Texas back then. A lot. You know, the Blue Max team was from here. Eddie Hill was from here. He's the first guy in the fours. The Jack Clark top fuel team was. There were so many top fuel teams here because funny cars. The funny car team I worked for was from here. That was Flash Gordon Minio.
I can't even remember what Buzz used to run out there. I do remember that was the first time I saw a motorcycle stunt guy jump over some 18-wheelers or something.
That's cool.
For 4th of July or New Year's Eve. Something
exciting.
Yeah. So when did you start driving these things?
Well, what?
Race
stunt?
cars? How did that?
Oh yeah.
transition?
I'm sorry, we got way off on here.
No such thing as that.
Oh, okay, good. I don't want to screw you up. I didn't get to drive much because I didn't have any money. You know, I got a couple offers to do
sure
this.
You were getting to test drive these race cars a little bit.
I mean,
right?
you have to have a license to drive a top fuel car, and I did get an offer to drive a top alcohol car once, and a couple little things like that. And really, I didn't get to drive shit. I mean, I really didn't. Yeah,
the 18-wheeler.
I got to drive the 18-wheeler. Yeah, exactly. I would sit in the car when we'd start it on the fuel car stuff, and on that end of the thing. And what happened was, in there somewhere, I don't even know what year it was, I started back with my motocross stuff when I stopped traveling. And when I stopped traveling with the race car team and started working at the chassis shop, I made the deal with Gaddy that the chassis builder guy, that I could kind of work out of my own shop, because I thought, man, I'm going to make a go at my own thing here. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, just something. I didn't even know what it was, really. I just wanted my own thing, you know, and maybe it was going to build myself a race car.
When you worked for so many different people.
Yeah, and then learned a lot of things, and you know, I didn't want to be moving around team to team. That's something that I didn't really like, because you kind of you're on one team, and you go with it. And I did stick with that one team that owned vehicle testing service for a while, and because things weren't changing that much, they were a lot more stable situation. So
it's got to be hard going from team to team. You got to build that camaraderie or something. Yeah, do it.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
Is it?
I hope I'm not rambling on about shit I shouldn't be or something.
No, dude, I don't. Dude, my biggest complaint with my podcast is they're not long enough, ever. That's the only complaint I ever get.
You got me yamming away.
No, it's good.
Thanks for letting me get that guy.
Oh yeah, no, dude.
I forgot I'd ordered that shit.
Well, you need it.
My groceries. Where were we, my friend?
Well, we were talking about drag racing. Oh, how you decided to strike out on your own. You were like, dude, I'm doing this on my own now. And this is in Oak Cliff?
Oak Cliff. My little place was in Oak Cliff. I think if, like you'd asked me before, how you set off to do, I think what I had always set off to do is to use the word, have my own deal. Whatever it was, is mine.
Okay, when I was talking about, did you plan on becoming
stunt driver or whatever.
You just wanted to be the boss.
I don't know if it's the boss or just it's kind of mine. It's all on me, sort of. It's on my shoulders. Whatever decision gets made, it's my fault if it's good, it's my fault if it's bad. I'm using the word fault. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking.
You wanted to be responsible.
I wanted to be the responsible party, you know.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'd seen in some magazines.
You're like, if Ed Miller can do it, then.
Man, if Ed Miller can do it, anybody can do it. That dude was crazy.
That's what it sounds like, man.
And I think you kind of. When you're young, you're kind of impressed. You're like, man, this guy, it was his shop.
It's his
van. He owned the building. He told me, you have to own the building. And that's one of the reasons I knew I had to buy my own building. But I wanted to run my own thing. And I made the deal with Gaddy that I'd work on the chassis and stuff like that. He liked to work at night. So I had my little shop during the day. I'd work in the morning, and then I'd go to lunch. And that, when Oliver and I first became friends, he brought some more cars. And what ended up happening was people were I thought immediately I was just going to be building cool race car stuff. Well, yeah, Elvis, the guy that does the clutch, I mean, I guess we can have him build something, but no, but they're having other people do stuff. So I would build little parts for the guys that were racing motorcycles at Big D Cycle. And I
So it was like a fab shop. You were doing.
it was dude, I'm telling you right now, I would
Whatever.
wash your car if you would pay me for it. I would do anything. But, the hopes were, I've got to use proper grammar, were that I would be building chassis or that I'd be building body parts or maybe painting, because I didn't know how to paint because I'd worked at the body shop. So, and I painted all my motorcycles and I was painting everybody else. And people would just bring me things. They'd bring me a car that, the frame had been cut out. Somebody put duals in it and they want to fix that. I'd fix that. And people would just bring me anything. And then what really happened for a long time was I was doing a lot of general repair work on old cars, because a lot of shops don't, in say the 90s, they don't want to work on a 1950s car. They're trying to get cars in and out. So
Still nowadays. Huh?
Yeah, nobody
especially
wants to
now.
Yeah, now they don't want to mess. So since I could do points and condensers and stuff, and back when I worked in the dealership, by the way, I was the guy that if a car came into the dealership and it was an older car, they gave it to me to work on, because I would do the points and the condensers and the old stuff that the new tune-up guys didn't want to mess with. They always gave me those old cars to do because I liked them, I guess. I look like I'd be working on them. That takes me all
Give
the
it
way
to
to
Elvis.
Ford versus Ferrari, right?
Yeah.
I look like the guy that should be working on it. So I just did a lot. I did anything. Literally, I mean, if somebody wanted me to change their oil, I'd change their oil. If somebody wanted me to build them a chassis from scratch, I would have done it, although there wasn't a lot of that work back then. But I was building things like seat pans, and I didn't have much. I mean, I had a workbench, a toolbox.
So were you working for other shops, or was it customers?
Where in my
Both?
building?
Yeah.
In my building, people were bringing stuff from shops. Like the shop down the street might say, "Hey, doesn't that guy have a welder? He knows how to weld aluminum or something." And they'd bring me something, I'd weld it up.
Gotcha.
Or fix some threads. I used to do a lot of thread repair. And then there was guys, like that's how I met Oliver, and a lot of tattoo artists and guys that were, I already knew the rock star guys that had just enough money to have an old car. There's no way he's still blowing stuff off down there. Is that possible? Wasn't that like an hour ago?
Yeah.
So okay, well, I'm sorry to get off on that. So I would do these things, and Oliver had a couple old cars, and then his friends, and then that's how he and I became friends. He would come check on his car, but I was just doing whatever. Literally, it wasn't like I'm going to do this. I'll do whatever it takes to pay the mortgage on this building. Mm-hmm. I mean, my mortgage was, what was my mortgage? $683 a month.
How many square foot was it?
800.
Oh, wow.
It was 800. It was pretty small.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty small,
It had
man.
some property around it. I think that was my mortgage. I'm pretty sure it was 683. I think that, and so I just realized that we've been talking so long that the dog probably should have, in that break, I should have taken the dog out to go to the bathroom. Can I have a pit stop?
Do it.
Okay, give me one.
Let's do it. I'd rather you be comfortable, man.
Well, I just realized that the dog has been down there forever.
No.
It won't take her but a second.
Don't run. Really, don't.
All right. Let's start blowing here right now.
Yeah, that's...
Are we back on?
Dude, I don't even press stop anymore
Oh, you don't?
because I've forgotten to press record again.
Well, we're back talking about whatever the hell I was doing before I was a stunt driver.
Yeah. You were trying to make things happen in Oak Cliff,
I was.
dude.
I really was. I was
Anything.
trying so hard. I had business cards.
So at this point, you're probably still getting phone calls to like be a cool extra with your motorcycle, or that
yes. And
that kind of just kept evolving.
That's what makes you a good podcast guy, because you just brought that back to there, so I can go from there. Yeah, those phone calls never stopped, really, because I had the two motorcycles.
So is there anything that we might be familiar with? Like, because I know my neighbor, the Wizard, he was in a movie called The Motorcycle Kid, maybe, that was filmed in Dallas.
That was filmed here. Yeah, I wasn't in.
That was before you.
Yeah, I think that was. Walker, Texas Ranger stuff.
Nice!
Hey,
you got to work with Walker, Texas Ranger.
And actually,
Is Chuck Norris really that badass?
I'm sure he is, but I was never around him.
So
I
you
was
were
only
second
around
unit?
second unit. Yeah. His son was the stunt coordinator towards the end, and his son Eric Norris he races cars. He's a race car guy too. Eric and I got along great, and Eric helped springboard my career, because he would tell other stunt coordinators that were from LA that there was this guy in Texas that could ride a motorcycle, drive a car, drive big trucks. He would have me drive big trucks, and he sort of was like my advertising for a little bit, you know.
Nice.
But most of those first things I did were terrible music videos, and you know, who knows what. I don't even remember what happened. A lot of it was photo shoots, which some of them I have stowed away, you know. Too bad this isn't a visual, because I have one sitting right where I could show you. You'd be like, oh yeah, I see what's going on here. But I had that 65 Chevy truck, which was kind of hot rodded, very period looking hot rod, you know. It got used a lot. And then what would happen is, because I was doing a lot of photo shoots, these art directors, they would come to me and say, we want your motorcycle, but do you have we want like 3 motorcycles. And I'd say, well, I have 2. And then, do you have a friend? And I would wrangle up a friend's motorcycle. Or they'd say, can you do more than 1 or 2 cars? And I would wrangle that. And then when I'd get there, they'd be like, well, we need one of these cars to be driving in the background. So that's what I would do. You know, I'd be the guy driving by in the background. And then I'd do a couple rap videos. And the next, you know, in a rap video, which, you know, I hate rap music.
But to even do this, like, I thought there was like unions. Did you have to like?
Oh yeah,
become,
well,
like how
that becomes later. Like that's why it's like I'm doing these low budget things.
Because they can just use whoever they want.
Yeah, they're flying under the radar and stuff. But then when you get to like the Walker show, then you have to be in the Screen Actors Guild to be on camera. And then what happens is guys like Eric Norris, who would, you know, have me come be a stunt guy, they sort of sign out. There's a word, it's called Taft-Hartley U. And then next thing you know, you're in the union.
They just kind of shuffle you in.
They shuffle you into the deal. That's a great way to put it. And so that started happening. And then I started getting calls about...
Because you don't seem like the union type.
I am not a union type. Oh, God, my friends are going to be like, wait, he's not supposed to say that, you know. But no, I understand that there's the Screen Actors Guild and there's collective bargaining and all that. But I do...
You live in Texas for a reason.
Yeah, I do. And I do feel that I think it's a little bit better if you get to negotiate your own situation. And I'm not going to say that the Screen Actors Guild doesn't negotiate a good situation, but also it's sort of... Like
every situation is a little unique, right?
Yeah, and luckily in stunts, because what they do is they have these day rates, and they say this is what it's worth to be a stunt guy for a day, right? And it's so weird in the union. They say, well, if the producers only have this much money, then this is what you're worth. But if they have more money, then you get more money. I'm like, that doesn't seem fair. You're charging people... You're saying I'm worth less if that guy has less money. Does that make sense?
But I still got to fall down the same flight of stairs.
Exactly. But what they do in stunts, which I will give them this, is you're allowed to have what's called an adjustment, which means you get your day rate, and then if you have to fall downstairs, the stunt coordinator and say that's more dangerous, so he gets another $1,000. But
who decides that?
The stunt coordinator and the producer. The stunt coordinator gets to prod the producer and how much he wants. Now, mind you, I don't fall downstairs, so you know, let's make sure I don't have. If I fell downstairs, it's because I don't know how to walk downstairs. You know, it's no being paid. But like, you know, like say on Baby Driver, we'd do some heavy driving stunt stuff, and the stunt coordinator called me and say, hey, you got an extra 200 or 400 or 600 or whatever, you know. And like once I ran an 18-wheeler that was on fire into a back of a Corvette and it exploded, and of course the stunt coordinator gives you a big adjustment for that because I'm driving an 18-wheeler that's on fire, and it runs it, so you get a big, you know, adjustment for that.
So the cooler the stunt is,
usually the more adjustment you get, but also the more, you know,
risk.
Yeah, if your quality of life later on is going to be affected by what could happen, then it's. But I don't want to go into the union thing because I am in the Screen Actors Guild.
We don't have to.
You know, but
before we get much further, we got to go right back to the motocross because you almost got into the motocross racing.
Oh yeah, well I did get into motocross racing.
Yeah, we didn't talk about.
it. I got you. Well, I'm a motorcycle guy, so and of course now I have my deals running. I'm doing cars for car commercials, and I'm driving in some car commercials, and I'm working on the Walker show every once in a while and stuff like that. And so I got where I had a little bit, if you want to call it, of my own money.
Yeah.
So I got another motocross bike, and I started going to the track and practicing, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna get back into.
So were you going like Village Creek?
Did go to Village Creek, Mosier. What is the name of the track that's in Irving? I can't remember what they used to call it. The Shady Grove, the Shady Grove track that's out there. And then I was going to tracks, practicing. I'm like, well, I got to start racing, because now I'm putting a lot of time into this. So, and then I raced some TCCRA stuff, cross country stuff.
Yeah, I've been looking at that.
Then I was racing at Mosier on Friday nights. I like the Friday night racing. And Village Creek, and I was racing stuff. Then my friends and I, we'd start going up to like Oklahoma to race, and then of course I headed to California because that's where you got to go if you're going to do anything. And you realize how fast you aren't when you get to California. Man, I was so fast back in Texas.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when they play football and they come here.
Yeah, exactly. There's always something like that. So, so I was doing that, and I was living the dream, and racing, practicing as many days as I could, working on my car commercials.
And the motorcycle racing was just on the side for fun, right?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. Nobody's making a living.
Yeah,
spending money really on. I was making a living driving cars in car commercials, but I was riding a lot. And actually, I did a couple of freestyle deals on camera for Marlboro. And I remember, I thought, I'm kind of like the Marlboro man, on a motorcycle.
Dude,
yeah.
That's awesome.
I thought it was so cool. And I remember my dad came to visit me. I'm like, man, let me show you this, because they had these posters that were like in liquor stores. And I actually was like straight up in the air, vertical on my motorcycle, and like kind of half off my bike. And I'm like, look, Dad, the Marlboro poster with me. And my dad's like, yeah, whatever. I've seen better. I'm like, I'm on a Marlboro poster, Dad. I mean, you can't catch a break with this man. And so while that stuff was going on, I don't know if you know, but I got injured really bad. I had a spinal cord injury. That's why I can't. And I'm paralyzed. I think everything's gone to shit. And
this happened at the track?
It happened at Shady Grove, yeah. And the helicopter came and took me off, and I got the surgery, and then they tell me I'm paralyzed and you're never going to walk again. And I'm thinking, oh Jesus Christ, this isn't good. And I was still trying to run the business, and
Chuck Norris showed up, huh? Just like,
and he
healed
me. No,
healed you.
It wasn't that cool. It took a lot more than that. I couldn't move anything from my injury down. I'm in a wheel. Shit was not good. It was terrible, man. I mean, I didn't have any control of my bowel or my bladder, because that's far down your spinal cord. And I had one employee in the shop.
What year was this?
2000. It's 20 years ago, actually. And I mean, moments before, I thought I was the cool. I'm doing freestyle.
You were the coolest
motocross, dude. I'm driving cars in car commercials. I'm doing freestyle motocross. I got a shop. I was building a lot of like race car stuff for people, here and there stuff. I was just killing it. I had an umbrella girl. You know what I mean? Like everything was good. She was my girlfriend.
Girl?
I mean, she was my girlfriend, but she'd stand there with the umbrella,
still
at the track. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing cooler than there's this girl with an umbrella while you're at the track, So, so I thought I was the coolest thing in the world, and then all of a sudden I couldn't even go to the bathroom on my own. So it was rough, and I mean that was just rough. People were calling me, "Hey, we need you to drive this 18-wheeler in this commercial." I'm like, I can't even get out of this bed,
Oh my
It was so rough.
Were you like letting those people know how bad it was, or were you just kind of like, I can't do it right now?
It was sort of can't do it right now, because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And we had some commercials and stuff going on, and that we were supplying cars for and things like that. And I had John Caruso, who incidentally later on had a spinal cord injuries in a wheelchair. But he was, coming to the shop and letting the dogs out and trying to talk to customers. It was just a mess, man. And I mean, I lived in the hospital for 3 months.
Oh my God!
It was just a complete disaster of my life. And that building wasn't paid off yet. And I didn't know what was going on. But what had happened was, I didn't give up. Is what had happened. Is like, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to be able. And I remember my goal was to be able to weld again. which since I was a TIG welder and you use your foot, I had to get a switch for my torch.
It's all doable.
Yeah, so I'd sit there in my wheelchair and weld on the welding table. And then there was some things that I could do, like my small paint gun, I could in the wheelchair, I could paint a gas tank or something. And John was still working in the shop. We were still getting some stuff done. And I mean, it was like, I don't know the exact time, like a year before I was kind of getting around in a walker. And
so were you doing like rehab, like every day?
Every day. Yeah. Oliver came and picked me up every day and took me to rehab. I was doing rehab every day when I was in the hospital. I was doing it every day. 5 days a week. I shouldn't say every day. It was 5 days a week. And Oliver would come get me at like 6:30 in the morning. He'd work.
When did they just tell you like, okay, there's a chance you might walk again, or did they ever say that? They didn't ever.
I mean, I don't think
you were
until
just
I was walking. I was
just
still
put
like
the blinders on.
Yeah,
we're like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I mean, there was times like my in the hospital, they're just like, oh yeah, we got to teach you how to live in the wheelchair. You can't move anything. You got no control of your bowel or bladder. You're like, whoa, man, I'm just gonna crap on myself the rest of my life, and I didn't want that. And then I did get some control of my bladder, if I remember right, which they were like, that's weird because you can't move anything else. And I was just like, I'm going to move my big toe, I'm going to move my foot, just try to move my foot. And once I could kind of move it a little bit, and like you just moved your foot, right? When my movement, if nobody's touching it, I could like, and I'm like, okay, I can talk to a part of my body.
They obviously don't know what the fuck's going on.
But they can't tell you you're going to walk they don't know what you're going to get return from your spinal cord injury. We don't want to go into all spinal cord injury stuff, but I just didn't want to give up. And what I'd done is I decided that I was going to, it's probably the best thing to say on a podcast, but I decided that if I couldn't get the tools out of the top part of my toolbox by my birthday, which is October 2nd, I got hurt January 7th, I think, or 6th or something. If I couldn't figure out how to get my tools where my sockets are in the top of my toolbox, then I was pretty much done for life. I wasn't going to be able to do shit anymore, and I was going to have to figure out how to do myself in. And so that was my date.
And this was like, you're talking about less than a year from the actual injury? That's not giving yourself much
No, it wasn't really.
For a spinal injury?
For a spinal
I'm
injury.
going to give up if I can't do it in less than 10 months.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It wasn't really, I wasn't.
You were just giving yourself a goal. Something to strive for.
Sorry about the phone too, by the way. I was giving myself, I wanted to be able to get the tools out of the top of my toolbox.
Well, see, if I were to tell them that it was like a real old-sounding phone ring like this, they wouldn't believe me. So now they can hear it.
It's
like a legit
it's a
bell ringing, getting hit by a hammer over there.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a rotary dial phone because we are upstairs in where I live, and there's about 3 things up here that were made past 1965, and that's it.
That's it. That's amazing.
No, there might be a 10. Who knows? I don't know, but and there's a lot of stuff up here. People are listening.
There's a lot of stuff up here.
The couch we're sitting on was made in 1958. My dad was just to get off subject, my dad was a telephone man his whole life, so he wired my phones into...
With this van?
He has a telephone van.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, it's too bad we can't show a picture of that one. So I just gave myself that goal to like get my tools out of the top of my toolbox. My friends were really cool about stuff like Oliver would come get me and take me to rehab. I had talked the lady at the pool, the rehab that ran the rehab pool, let me come in there, and then I figured out a way to, and we went to this place called the Gait Lab. I remember when my dad was visiting one time, I got to go visit this lady at the Gait Lab. That's one of those places where if they think you can walk again from a spinal cord injury, they will take you, but they only have room for so many people because not that many, it's a pretty specialized thing. Back then there was probably
they're spending
2 to
a lot
10.
of money practicing.
Yeah, and so when I went there originally, she's like, yeah, you're not going to walk again. And she said, come back and talk to me if you get this to happen or that to happen. So later I did get to come back, and she and I made a deal, and I went to the Gait Lab. And
it's cool that she also gave you something else to strive for. Like,
yeah.
if you can do this.
I mean, it kind of freaked me out a little bit, and it freaked my dad out a lot because I think he was like, oh man, she was like, you're a done deal. And I don't know if it was like he was freaked out for me. He was freaked out for him, like, oh God, now Jeff's going to be paralyzed and I got to take care of him or something. But he wasn't going to take care of me, but he just didn't want to have to deal with me, He lived, at the time he had retired, or he had moved to Florida from D.C., and he had come to visit me, and he just didn't want nothing. He didn't like the fact that I raced motorcycles. He didn't like anything to do with it. He had been to like one of my motorcycle races, and I came in third on podium. He's like, "Yeah, that ain't that good." I'm like, "Yeah, I came in third, Dad." You know, he thought I was an idiot.
Everybody
Anyway.
else is 10 years younger than me.
Yeah,
probably.
exactly. Yeah, and so Dad wasn't too happy about that, but I wasn't too happy about it, and I was kind of scared a little bit. There was some times it gave me kind of a little bit of a,
Yeah, this could be real.
I don't know if it's a scared feeling, kind of a sinking feeling. It was more like a sinking, like, man, this is not going to be good for me. But I got through it, you know, with help from my friends like Oliver, who made sure I got there, and this girl Tammy Thompson, she used to come pick me up sometimes, and John would come pick me up, and I got to all those because I couldn't drive. I'm in a fucking wheelchair.
Yeah, I mean, they just had to load you up, or you crawling
They
with
had
your
to load me up,
hands?
man. They had to load me up, put the chair in the back. Once I got to the walker, I couldn't move. You know, I can't. What happens is there's parts of your body that don't move. Once I got to the walker, I'm like, man, I think I can drive myself. And what's funny is I was driving myself in a manual transmission car. It was so dodgy.
gosh.
So what I would do is, like, I could pick my foot up and put it, like, rest it on the clutch, but it would kind of have to rest there. So I could take my left hand off the steering wheel and push my foot in to push. I could push my leg down,
That's like
push the clutch in.
hand clutch.
Yeah, and then I'd shift and I'd grab the steering wheel. I was doing, man, you know, there's probably some law that says, you know, I'm surprised I didn't kill somebody, but it made me feel better that I could drive a manual transmission car. And it was a while before I rode a motorcycle, man.
Dude.
A long while. And then, you know, what's funny is once I got back to riding motorcycles again, I'm getting hired by stunt coordinators because they knew that I had raced motorcycles and I was a motorcycle guy. And Russ, I could barely fucking walk, man. You know,
My gosh.
you know, I was doing some gnarly shit too.
So, like, when did you, like, really see the light at the end of the tunnel? Like, all right, I'm going to get through this. Because it sounds
You know
like
what's funny is you never really, because it takes so long. I mean,
there
once
was never, like, a point where something
yeah, there was a
magical
couple things that
happened.
were, if you want to call them magical. I remember I was in the wheelchair and I was at Baylor Institute for Rehabilitation where I was doing some of my rehab, and I remember thinking, well, you know, we're doing this stuff where I can't get myself up to get myself up out of the wheelchair into a walker. It was when I was starting the walker stuff. They would have to help me. And I remember I went in a bathroom stall because back then, you know, you're in a wheelchair and you're like peeing in the thing and then throwing it away and all that stuff. And I remember thinking, what if I can figure out a way, because I can lock my legs, if I can go to the bathroom standing up. I mean, I wanted to yell and scream when I figured out how to do that. But that was a long time into it, and I'm surprised I didn't just crash into the toilet. You know, but I was in a place that had, you know, rails and everything.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I did it standing up, you know. And that was one time, and I think driving something with a clutch was one time. But I got the tools out of the top of my toolbox I could open a toolbox drawer, and I was still in the wheelchair. I could open one drawer and kind of get it all the way open, and then open another drawer that's like a little bit farther away the way my drawers are, you know. And I'd pick myself up, and I could lock my legs back because I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't do it with my muscles. I'd have to take my hand and push one leg
Physically
back.
locked in the
yeah,
knee?
like my knee. And then once I could do that and I could hold on to the toolbox and get the tool out, I'm like, well, I don't have to kill myself now. So that was a good moment, right? Like, hey, man, I don't have to kill myself. I'm going to get through life here, you know. So you know, there was because it took so long. I mean, I'm not kidding you, man. It was probably 2 years, maybe more, before I could like walk up one step. Like and my friends knew this. If we'd go places, even once I could walk. Because I went from the wheelchair to a walker, which that's not cool. It's hard to be cool in a walker, and then to forearm crutches, which you're like, I'm even less cool with a forearm. I don't know if the walker's worth the forearm, and then to a cane, and then where I could walk, but I didn't have enough muscles, like I didn't have enough return to walk up one step. So if we got to a curb, I could walk, and my friends had to help me up the curb. Like literally, Oliver and those guys, we would go places and they'd walk ahead of me and they could keep going because I'm so slow. And as soon as it was like they had this muscle memory, they walked up a curb, they would have to stop to get me up the curb, you know?
Oh, man.
So it just took forever. It was forever, but I was like, you know, I was back to driving cars in car commercials And I mean, I remember being on set a couple times. People were like, "Man, we need the driver over here. Hurry up!" And then I'd be like trying to get there, and they'd be like, "Why is he taking so long? You know, like, why is he?" And people would be like, "Well, yeah, you know, he had an injury." And then like, "Why is our driver? You know, what is going on?" But some people were cool about it.
I mean, that seems like that's like part of the trade, like being a
Well, there's
stuntman. Like
some-
they got to be kind of used to
Yeah,
the
this
stunt
guy-
driver
yeah.
like being a little injured or not being there because he got injured.
Yeah, and some people are cool about it. Like stunt coordinators would be cool about it. But you know, people in the people in the film
like,
business, they're
just get somebody else.
Yeah,
he's
they
just
we
driving
don't
a
have
fucking
time.
car.
Yeah, they don't care about you. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, people in the film world don't really care about, you know, a stunt guy gets hurt. Like, yeah, you make sure get the wardrobe off of him before you take him to the hospital. You know, they just put somebody else. They don't care. You know,
Yeah.
and there's a few that care. I mean,
I can't think of another movie. Now, this doesn't mean a lot, but the only movie I can think of is Death Proof, where like there was a stunt man that was like kind of the star of the movie, you know?
Tarantino likes that. You know, I mean, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad Pitt's a washed up
Oh, that's
stunt
right.
guy.
He is. That's right.
But he's great at it. You know, he's a great washed up stunt guy. Hooper, the movie Hooper with Burt Reynolds. It was written by stunt guys. I think it was written by stunt guys to make a movie about stunt guys.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, like I said, me not seeing it doesn't mean a whole lot. I do love movies, though. Like, I'm not a movie buff, but I do enjoy
Movies
watching
are fun
movies.
because you kind of get a little bit of escape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since I don't drink or do drugs or anything, that's my like little bit of escape from what's, you know, the world out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really would rather be in the shop building something, but you know, you go on a date with a young lady or something, the girl you want to go to the movies, it's a nice little and see a little world.
So what's the coolest movie or production you've been a part of? I mean, was Ford and Ferrari it, or is there some other stuff?
It's going to be hard to beat Ford versus Ferrari for me. I mean, I got to literally I played myself, a race car mechanic, in the past, and I'm a guy that's been like trying to live in the past since the early '80s, and somehow Robert Nagel gave me the greatest gift that any stunt coordinator could ever. I mean, I literally time traveled and played myself. How am I going to beat that?
I don't
you know, like I don't know how I could beat it. I was interviewed not that long ago by Matt. You know Matt from Rolling Heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he interviewed me and he's asked something like, you know, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to beat Ford versus Ferrari. You know, I don't know. It's going to be hard to beat that.
Yeah, like
where do you go from there?
Unless somebody was specifically trying to write a role or for me to beat that, you know, like.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't. I liked working on Baby Driver because of all my friends. It was a group of us, and we were the same guys that were on Ford versus Ferrari. Pretty much, there was more guys on Ford versus Ferrari, but they're like a core group of stunt driver friends of mine. Can I say their names? I mean,
yeah, you can say please.
I mean, I don't know if I'm being, you know, but I mean, like being around Jeremy, who's one of the better people I know in this world. You know, he's a very spiritual guy and an all-around good person, and Danny Downey, and the guy who doubled Ken Miles, his name is Tony Hunt. He's just a great guy, and Chris Palermo, and it's just I could go on, and you know.
Well, my thought about so I would think most people's initial thought of a stuntman is like kind of like just eccentric or like a bull rider where they just got loose screws, you know, like, and they're just wild. But to do it for a living, like I know from just riding an old chopper that doesn't have brakes around the country, like you got to be dialed. Like you can't even have like extra shit going on in your life that's like clogging up your brain. Like you really got to be in the here now.
You're very right about that.
So they got to be like I would imagine some really unique and like powerful individuals to be around, you know, that are there, that are present in the moment.
Good ones are.
Yeah.
And just like
the ones that are going to be around that you're going to keep seeing.
Just like everything with modern times and, you know, internet and social media, there's a lot that say they're good or they talk, but the good ones, like that's why I kind of wanted to name their names. And there's a guy named Brian Avery that was on that show. You know, when you're around them, you're comfortable and you hope that they're comfortable around you. And there's a bunch of others, some older time guys. Shelley Ward is one. They're comfortable with themselves. They're the guys that don't talk shit about other people. I saw an interview with one of the producers from a bunch of James Bond movies, and he was saying back in the 60s that he really realized that the stunt guys are serious because what they're doing, somebody can get hurt or die, so they take their job seriously. Now the other people in the film, where they act insane, they're yelling, screaming, cussing, doing things they shouldn't be doing, talking down to people, doing unsavory things. That's what I've noticed the most about the film business. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, but good stunt guys, and I'm mostly around stunt drivers, they have their shit together on a lot of ways. There's some things, like you said, have a screw loose that you don't. And there's guys that are cowboy guys, they specialize in cowboy. Those guys all have their own little world, they're horse guys, cowboy guys. And they joke around, and they do have a little bit of like living for today, because tomorrow you might be in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
But a lot of people say, how can I become
I
a
think
stunt?
that's just like a deep appreciation for everything, really.
Yeah.
It's like
it is. It's like they appreciate.
that-
You have as you say, you ride a chopper, and Oliver and I agree with this. And when you're out in the motorcycle, you're like, there's the world out there. You're paying attention to those cars, especially in LA. You're riding around. You're paying attention, so you are paying more attention instead of looking at your cell phone or getting on the internet or the BS, the lies, and everything that happens.
Or even just just drifting off in your head when you're in a car and the protection of your car in your lane. You're just kind of...
And there is a lot to that, and I think I'm a driver only. I don't fall down, I don't fall out of buildings, catch on fire. But when I get in when I'm driving, like in car commercials, I'm in my own little world, and I have it. There's this uncalm out there, and I try to keep my calm inside. But it is definitely different. And a lot of people ask me, how am I going to be? Well, usually if you're not racing something by now, you're probably not going to get there, because everybody I know that's a stunt driver or a motorcycle rider all raced something. It's not just the skills you get from driving the car, riding the motorcycle. I think it's a little the mentality. If you want to go race your motorcycle, like when I was racing my motocross bike, I had to work all night long to make sure my motor, and then we had to drive all night long, or drive the next day, or all night long the next day to get somewhere. And then you might total out your motorcycle, or you might blow up your motor, and then you have to go back and just fix it again. And unless you have that kind of racer mentality, I don't think you have what it takes to be a stunt driver, because you've also learned things like get your piece of shit trailer across the country, and you learn how to back your trailer up. You also learn things a lot being racing things, like you learn to feel things in cars or motorcycles that are wrong. And if somebody just thinks they're going to go to some driving school and become a driver, it shouldn't piss me off, but it sort of pisses me off a little bit in a way.
That reminds me of one thing I was thinking about this morning, watching the Ford versus Ferrari. And it was when, I think it was Ken Miles, who was Christian Bale's talking to his son about like knowing the motor and knowing where the limits are so that you can push the limits.
You feel things in cars when you.
And so much more so, like with the carburetor, and like being able to push the throttle down and blow the motor up. Whereas, like in most cars now, like that's not even an option. You push the throttle all the way down, like
it's not gonna. Yeah, exactly. I mean, nowadays the cars drive themselves.
So,
they
like,
park themselves. I
just thought that movie did a really good job of portraying or showing you like
it did actually.
How much.
That's why a lot of car people love
those
that
drivers movie. Back then are like
they
that.
have to be very on the.
They
and
were
when
there.
when you race things, whatever it is, when you're racing, it's a whole different mentality, and racing, especially when you race professionally. We didn't even get into all that, my NASCAR stuff, when I got, and the road racing stuff. When you're racing professionally, by the time you get to where somebody is paying you for how well you perform, you've had to, if you want to talk it one way, you've had to eat so many shit sandwiches, and you don't really care, because it's really almost your goal is not to be a famous race car driver. It's just to race or be a famous motorcycle racer. Or like you said, like I wanted to do freestyle motocross stuff by the time that was coming around, but really my goal wasn't to be famous doing freestyle. It's like the journey there. And if you're not the type of person that can take the journey, and live for that whole journey. Like I say, getting your POS motocross bike that isn't faster than everybody else's because you don't have rich parents that buy all the cool shit, and working on it and trying to make it as good as you can. And then it maybe sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, and you have to get yourself all the way to Corona, California. You know, it takes 24 hours of driving to get there to race, and then you get your ass handed to you by these people out there, and then you come back and you still keep working at it. It's that mentality that'll get you to be a professional stunt driver, not like, oh, can I spend some money and go to school? I mean, you know, you think about it. I've said this in other things. If you,
I guess there is stunt driving school.
Oh, you know, don't get me started on. Can we just skip over that? You know, just the other day, somebody told me. I'm trying to not because they were talking about a girl who I think was a makeup artist, sweetest, cutest, nicest girl. And they said, yeah, she went to California for a couple weeks, went to a school, now she's certified to be a stunt driver. And I said, hold on. You don't, what are you talking about, certified to be a stunt driver? And you're going to tell me that I could have, like, partied till 2 weeks ago and, like, done whatever else I wanted to do for a living, and then in 2 weeks I can become a stunt driver? Like, that's not, but in the world of make-believe, people believe that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's almost like school to some degree. Like, people, they graduate with their motorcycle mechanic degree, and they're like, really they think they've got it figured out. Maybe some of them don't think it, but that's only like such a small part of like actual. I think you know, you're probably one of the last generations that got to be an intern somewhere, get mentored. You know, like learn on the site or on the job.
And that's I have a kid that works in the shop. You know, he's in the shop class in high school, but I mean, that's the way to learn. Yeah.
Well, it's cool that you're doing that too. That's one thing I like to ask people that have become professionals at whatever they do is like, are you teaching people? Like, are you passing the knowledge on? Because there's no schools that can teach what you've learned.
No, and if somebody wants to be a stunt driver, some of the guys I know, like, they raced motorcycles and cars like me. You know, I've raced.
Yeah, how did you get into racing NASCAR? Like, how did we miss that?
I'm sorry. I never drove the NASCAR truck in a race. As this was, what happened was when I started getting back on my feet, one of the guys that I rode motocross with, who really wasn't, he was the guy that didn't have the mentality, but he wanted to be a road racer. I'm sorry. He wanted, I skipped. He had a motocross bike. He did some motocross stuff. He was a decent rider. He wanted to get into road racing automobiles. So you have to start pretty low. And we started that, and he didn't, great, funny guy. He really should have been a comedian for a living. But he had some parents that had some money, and they gave him some money for us to buy some parts and stuff. And we made a deal where if I did the work and built the car, and he paid for the parts, we would be 50-50 owners in this race car. And it was a very low-line race car. Formula Fords is what they're called. So we did that, and we ran some races, and he didn't do that good. And I think he thought, well, if we do this other class, I'll do better. And we started to build that, and it didn't go anywhere. And then in the end, he's like, just buy me out of my half. And so I ended up owning all the race car stuff. And then by that time, I had moved into some professional, very low-end professional racing. And there's a series called the Formula 2000. And then I learned very quickly that there's a lot of rich kids out there that their parents are filthy rich. This is not Ken Miles kind of racing. This is modern day racing. Filthy rich kid, parent wants them to be driver. They pay for somebody to race prep their car, take care of their car. The kid flies to the race, he gets in the car and he drives the car. And some of these kids have talent. Some of them have been racing go-karts. They get there, you know, but they don't get their hands dirty. So what happens with these very wealthy folks, that's fine. That's, you know, they made their money their way. They want to spend it their way. I'm fine with it. They want their kids to be driving a race car, and they had them driving a go-kart, and they just hire people, shops, to race prep their go-kart, and the kid shows up and drives the cart. And if he's has some aptitude and he tries hard and he works good, he'll move up the line. He doesn't ever have to really get his hands dirty overhauling the transmission, changing the gears and all that. And there's a race. So what I realized was, well, now I own this kind of race car that these kind of kids this is the feeder series as you get up there. So you get these kind of wealthy parents, and then we added a couple of those, and then we have these, and we're running these things, and we're making money off of them. And it's a race prep thing. It's how the world has become. It's not like it used to be. Not when I was trying to race. Nobody's parents paid for anybody's shit. You either went out there and got it, And if your parents paid for it, then they were into racing. You know what I mean? Like that is a way that would happen. But this is more of a different thing where your dad's like an attorney for something, he pays for this or whatever. And so that helped me because there was a certain market for that, and by that time I had bought the 18-wheeler, the race car hauler, and we were doing that. And then I wanted to step up the level, and a buddy of mine, Moses, who's one of my stunt driver buddies, and he races professionally a lot of different things, he said, you should be racing in NASCAR because you can build the chassis in your shop and you can build the motor in your shop if you want to, which we tried that and it didn't go very well. But he's like, you can build these vehicles in your shop because you have the skills to build them. In formula car racing, that's a carbon fiber tub, so it has to come from England or wherever they're built at the time. The ones we had were British, and you have to pay people for these tubs and all. And he was right. I could build the NASCAR chassis. It might not be the fastest one, but I had the skills to build the chassis, and I learned quickly about hanging bodies and things like that. And he was right, and I stepped up our program. I spent every penny I had and built an NASCAR Craftsman truck, which was, it'd take 4 hours to tell you how we even got there. But once we did that, then we had a driver, and then we
so cool. A NASCAR Craftsman truck. That's not like for the Craftsman Tools team, or like Craftsman's just like.
I'm sorry, I have to say, Craftsman is the premier sponsor of the truck series.
Okay.
So I should just say NASCAR Truck Series.
Okay.
Is what I should say. I'm sorry. Back then it was called Craftsman Truck. Now it might be.
No, I figured that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make sure.
I'm sorry that and people don't understand. The series was called, like they're like Bush.
Yeah. I got you.
Sponsor the Bush series because it was Bush beer. But the Truck Series, NASCAR has 3 what they call Premier Series, which is the big time racing. It's not a regional series because they have regional series races, and the Premier Traveling Series that goes all around the country, and it was the Truck Series and what they called Bush Series, which is a car, and then the Cup Series, which is the main big. And most all Cup teams have truck teams, and the owners
they're like
have
feeder teams.
They're feeder teams, but they race at the same venues, and so that way NASCAR can run 3 races a weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on the bigger things. And
when they do the setup at the track, they can. Everybody gets to race.
Yeah, and so we raced the Truck Series because that's the beginning of it. And like I said, I had my race car hauler, my 18-wheeler, so the bones of the race team were here. The building was paid for.
Yeah,
and so that's where that happened. And that when I never drove the truck in any races, you have to have a license for that. And really, I was focusing on being the crew chief and the owner. Really, I was focused on making a living because we were making money at that. So, and I'm trying to do that and driving car commercials and go work on. I remember Prison Break was happening then, and to full circle, Eric Norris, who's a stunt coordinator, was the stunt coordinator on Prison Break, but he also drove in the Craftsman Truck Series, so he and I would be at some of the same races together.
And on a different team he was?
Yeah. I was the crew chief on one team, and he was the driver of another.
That's awesome. Well, NASCAR, one of my favorite things about NASCAR, we used to go to NASCAR a lot too. My dad's a big race fan. He never raced or anything. But like getting the scanners and listening to what the fucking pit crews are saying to the drivers, like what other racing can you go to the race and tune in with the actual
what's
people.
Going on? And NASCAR is unbelievably smart. Just the whole operation. They probably now with the right hashtag I need it right now kind of people are the I don't know if it's millennials or what, just the people nowadays want things right this second. So NASCAR races aren't really a right this second thing because there's pit stops, there's things going on. So NASCAR's having a hard time, not a hard time, but they're adapting. But I'm telling you, when I was in NASCAR, they had their shit together. Those people, they had their shit together.
Dude, when they put in Texas Motor Speedway, it broke the Metroplex the first weekend, the traffic.
Yeah, and that's part of their deal is they understood at the time that was exciting. There's pit stops, there's crashes, which I don't really like the crashes, but that makes it exciting because now there's these strategies and people trying to fix cars to get back on the track. Now people are a little more like right now, you got to, Amazon will bring it to you in an hour. A NASCAR race that you crash a car, kind of like Le Mans. You crash, you bring it in, you fix the thing, you get it back on the track, and they probably have a little bit of a hurdle with that. But I tell you, they were so professional. I loved racing in NASCAR.
I didn't really enjoy it that much back when we were going. More than just like feeling the cars, like the energy at the track. Until later on when I like learned more about the actual racing, like bump drafting, like getting behind people and like the strategic stuff that goes into that.
So
and like,
much
like
strategy.
like mile flat track racing on a bike, like the winner's not out front the whole race,
no.
like unless he's like gone. But like the guy out front in the last, the second to third to last lap, he's not going to win. Like he's.
Yeah. He can, but he's in a good position, but he's not in the greatest position.
Yeah, learning all those things made me really appreciate those sports more.
It was funny because when we went from the road racing stuff, those carbon fiber tub stuff, and people are a little bit like kind of highbrow, and they would talk, a little bit down about NASCAR and stock car racing, and there's the perception of people with the heavy accent, the southern accent. When I got to NASCAR, I realized these people are the smartest people in motorsports, man. Because what they're taking is NASCAR's rules, at the time, is the carburetors, nothing could be computer controlled. Nothing. I mean, you had an MSD system, but you couldn't have data logging systems, so the crew chiefs didn't get the information off the vehicle. In road racing, you have all the information off the vehicle, everything that's going on. You get to NASCAR, you have to set that thing up. And that thing is made out of parts that literally are on my 65 Chevy truck. I could interchange a part off my 65 Chevy truck and they had to dial their shit in so precise. I'm like, I realized these guys are so smart. Like I was sort of in awe of how smart the guys I met in NASCAR. Like,
wow.
And when I got there were engineers and stuff, but none of these guys were educated. College educated. These guys were race educated. The people that I met
track smart.
Yeah, they're a little bit older than me. Their dad had raced dirt track. These people had raced dirt go-karts. They were so smart. It was almost like this kind of funny thing where these other people acted like they were the highbrow people. There's all this carbon fiber tubbed cars that were so awesome, and but what I realized, those cars were so engineered perfect, but it made the guys running them have such an easy job of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, a Formula car will just go around a track. You have to really screw up for that thing not to really handle right. But you put one of those stock cars up there with literally you have to change these little minute things, and it was just so awesome. It was very awesome being in that, and back then everything was so handmade. We welded the chassis together right here in this building we're sitting in. We hung the bodies on them. The guy that taught me a lot about body stuff, his name was Cecil Tipton. Man, back then there was probably 3 guys that were just the original body hangers, because original stock cars, they were made out of stock cars. They took a car and put a roll cage in it, and then there was. And I don't know what years it happened, if it was the 80s or something, that they started, okay, we're going to build a chassis and hang potty parts on it, hang sheet metal on it, that it's a made chassis. It might have been the 70s, I don't know. And there was this original 3 or 4, maybe 5 guys, 5 at the most guys that were the original guys that started what they call hanging bodies, hanging a body on a race car chassis instead of just taking a stock car and modifying it. And Cecil was one of those guys, and the magic, I don't know if it's magic, it's just smart people, because you had these templates that they had to meet, because NASCAR gave you these giant templates that cost a fortune, that were, everybody had the same templates, you put on the car and they'd measure all this stuff, and NASCAR had the same templates and they measured, you go through tech. But there were guys like this guy Cecil that could build a body to templates, and then say some other guy, like me, I'd build a body to templates, but for some reason Cecil's body could cut through the air, way faster than mine. I don't want to use technical terms, but then they go to just starting to use wind tunnels and so you put my body in a wind tunnel and his body in a wind tunnel. They both went through templates. They both are tech the same. They're both the same body. They made the templates and everything, and some of the sheet metal came from GM or Ford or whatever. But for some reason, his would go faster. And Cecil started teaching me some of this stuff, and you're like, man, how do you know this? And then how do you, in North Carolina, because NASCAR's home is North Carolina, they call it cheating it up. You cheating up the body, man. And Cecil would show me, and we'd start doing this stuff, and literally you'd look at my truck body, and it looked like it's bent in the middle, like a boomerang, but somehow it made it through templates, And I'm like, I guess I'm going to do this. And what it was you're catch and drag this way and these guys were so much smarter than everybody else and just quiet about it, with these heavy Southern accents. These guys are so dialed into what they were doing. It was unbelievable, actually. And NASCAR itself, I was saying, the way NASCAR runs NASCAR is more professional than professionalism. It's so professional. Everything happens when NASCAR says something's going to happen. It happens then. It doesn't happen 10 minutes after. It doesn't happen 2 minutes after. It doesn't happen 2 minutes before. It happens when NASCAR gives you their schedule. That's when it happens. If there's a rain delay, then they let you know right away. NASCAR has these NASCAR officials. They're with you in your garages. You're never in the dark about anything with NASCAR. Like, it's just, they are so locked onto their program. And like you were saying, you as a fan, I guess you'd say, a race fan.
Yeah.
NASCAR realized, man, fans are going to want to listen to what the crew chiefs are talking to because there's spotters, crew chiefs, and then the driver. They're the only ones that get to really talk on.
Well, it's hard to have an announcer to do justice on that scale when there's that many cars out there. There's that many fans.
And then NASCAR. Wait, let's let them listen to what's going on.
Let's sell them some headphones.
They're scared. Who knows how much they made on that deal? And then just the merchandising. And if you want to sell things, you have to sell it through NASCAR. Because NASCAR owns NASCAR. They don't mess around, man. No. They are so professional.
Yeah.
I mean, if NASCAR says something, it's gospel. I mean, they don't care who it is. They could be the title sponsor of NASCAR, and they want to show up in the garages. They're not getting in before NASCAR says the garages are open. It could be, the president could show up, and if he didn't have long pants on, NASCAR wouldn't let him in. You know what I mean? NASCAR does not mess around. They have rules, and they are the rules that they go by. What they say happens. They don't change them for anybody, and it just happens on a perfect time schedule.
So you were out, you've been to Daytona? To Indianapolis?
Yeah.
I got to go to Daytona's track last year.
Well, I should say we went to Daytona because if you want to race the Daytona race, even in a Craftsman truck, a truck series, they pretty much say you have to go down there and test because NASCAR only let you. I don't know what the rules are now. I've been out a while. There's only a few test tracks that they let you go test at because they don't want the big money teams out there just go and test at this track and then take that car to that track the next, because you could spend so much money where you could have cars that go and test at, say, Texas Motor Speedway
before the race.
Yeah, while you're racing in Las Vegas, and then you could take that truck. You've had all this test time and then run it. So NASCAR doesn't let you test unless they say it's a test session, and then everybody's invited. And
they want it to be a race.
Yeah,
again,
and so they have you test at Daytona if you're going to run Daytona that year. So I thought maybe we're going to try to run Daytona, and man, we went down there and tested and spent a lot of money and blew up motors. Because Daytona's what's called a super speedway, so it's a restrictor plate track, which means NASCAR gives you a restrictor plate to run, which changes a lot.
Where does the restrictor plate even go?
Between the carburetor and the intake manifold, and there's a lottery system or the way they pick your restrictor plate and give it to you. They're all the same. They're all made the same, but the company that makes them, you can buy them and you can run your motor on one. But during the race, you have to have the NASCAR's restrictor plate on. I'm not sure how the rules are now. I'm talking about when I was there. So, but
this was your experience.
Yeah, a restrictor plate race is a whole nother breed of smartness that I wasn't ready for. I mean, because I'm
Well,
we
it
are
seems
talking
genius because you want, the better the race, the more the fans are going to enjoy it. So,
well, what happened? I think what happened was the cars were going too fast on the 2.5 mile tracks, super speedways, because they have bigger banks. The ovals are banked.
that was what blew my mind was the bank at
the bank.
Daytona. It's like,
and so if a car has that much run up, a race car, it can get well over. I mean, back then you probably without a restrictor plate could go 220 miles an hour. I mean, you could go faster than NASCAR wanted their vehicles going.
yeah.
Because when you get to the 220 plus mile an hour range in anything, when it hits the wall, the human being inside of it has a hard time surviving. So I'm assuming that played a lot into restrictor plate.
Not just equalizing the field.
Not just the equalizing, but NASCAR doesn't want to be losing drivers.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people watch racing for the wrecks, which I don't like that, but that is part of it. But when you get to super speedways and you have those banked ovals, and the boys in North Carolina are smart enough to make that thing go around that track more than 220. I'm saying 20, 25 miles an hour. I don't recall, because they used to make crew chiefs, drivers, and your engineers were allowed, but every year at Daytona you had to go to the vehicle dynamic, I can't remember the exact words, but because NASCAR tests what safety stuff, and they come up with a lot of safety stuff, and I know that the concern is if a human being is sitting in a car that hits a wall and he's going that fast, it's hard for the body to sustain that.
No matter what.
To go from 225 to 0. And there's other things. I mean, it does keep the field together, because the higher end teams could figure out how to run faster without the restrictor plate. Mm-hmm. And guys like us would never be able to keep up with them. But and they made us put bigger spoilers on the back too. And we'd have to hang the body different too. We hang our body so it didn't have any drag. The bodies were hung more straight. Now it's a whole different body thing, but there's a lot into it. I mean, there's a whole lot into making cars go fast. A lot more than people think.
So did you have like a factory spot? I mean, it just seems like at that level, like there's a lot of money involved in that,
my God,
dude. I mean,
I never had so much money coming and going in my life, dude. But I had some associate sponsors, if you want to call it that. There's a lot of you used to call them marketing partners, by the way.
Yeah,
that's
there you go. Yeah,
correct term. The Reverend Horton Heat was one of ours. I guess his record label gave us a certain amount of money each week. We had a deal with General Motors because we ran a Chevrolet body and a Chevrolet motor. We didn't have a giant deal with them, but the hood skin and the roof skin and the A pillars and B pillars, I hope people that are listening to this know what I'm talking about. The skins of that were literally off of Chevrolet trucks. That's the skin, not what makes it, but in their floppy as all get out. And then GM, each brand, the nose piece of the race car, they supplied that to us. We got it for free, if I recall. And it's a carbon piece that you build your race car off of.
Gotcha.
So we had this hood that we'd have to make the skeleton part of it, so wouldn't be a floppy hood. You have to make the supports of it. They'd give us the hood and the front nose piece, and they would give us the roof, because that's the only way you could fit templates. I mean, if you were a bigger team, you could make a punch press and make the thing, but GM gave it to us, and the A pillars and the B pillars, and then we made the body from there. Was our. So we did have a deal with General Motors, because you asked. I'm giving you more of it. And the deal was we got that stuff. And then, if I recall, there was, last year we ran, there's this way that some advertising agency in Chicago, I forget their name, what they were, that would keep up with how much time each team was on TV because they're broadcast
Oh
live.
yeah.
So
I got you.
and then like I as the crew chief would get interviewed, and the driver would get interviewed, and if you notice, they say they'd go into spiel like our Chevrolet Silverado, and they'd name off Coca-Cola and whatever else, whatever brand it is. Well, it got towards the end of our deal where, if I remember right, Chevrolet sent out something that they were going to pay us, every team, by how much each time you said Chevrolet on camera, and how much time your vehicle was on. I can't really remember, but I'm pretty sure that there was something like that. So there was a little bit there with that, and a lot of marketing partners, that how much time you spent on TV was how much money they would give you.
Yeah,
because it's their advertising.
That's how they're doing it. When I see that, that used to be the biggest way for racing, for people to get noticed, or brands to get noticed. Like you hire a racing team. But now with the whole social media and influencers,
it's all different.
You don't have to be a racer to get airtime.
And racing originally. What is the crack? The first motorcycle race started the second.
Yeah, the day
the second motorcycle was built, right?
Yeah.
But racing used to be guys who had a shop like me. I had a shop. I wanted to go racing.
Yeah.
And it grew into something different. It grew into something that was a lot more of a business, and that's fine because that's how the free market works. It grew into something that is different now, and I still have a lot of friends that work on teams in North Carolina, and it is kind of a bummer that some of the people that own race car teams, they didn't even have anything to do with cars before they retired from whatever corporation they worked at. Or one guy, a friend of mine, works on a team. He's like, the guy that owns our team owns a construction company that built a bunch of houses. So he didn't ever race cars, he didn't ever drive cars, he didn't ever build cars. The guy's never changed his own oil, but he owns a NASCAR team, and that's how it is, and it's a bummer.
Yeah. One thing I learned that, I don't know, came as a shock to me, but when I think about it, it's not that much of a shock. But I think it was the AMA back when they started racing motorcycles, to get the bigger companies to put money into racing. They developed the classes where you got to run stock bikes.
Yeah, I mean that is a. I can't really. All you have to do is look at the money trail.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's a series, but you can only use a certain brand of something, and all of a sudden, there's a class, and to be in that class, you have to buy this certain part. And I guess that's how the things work. It's not what I would like it to be, but I'm a minority.
But racing is fun, man.
Racing is everything, really. For someone. So
how do you get your kicks now? Do you get to race anything now, or is it just the?
I don't, and it's sort of, in a way, I guess I've never done drugs, but like a drug, so it's kind of a hard thing because you don't. If you step back off in it, you're going to go all the way. I have a drift car. All my stunt driver buddies, are like, well, you need a drift car. We all have drift cars. Yeah. So I have a drift car that I built. It's built like a race car. It's pretty much a race car. I can switch it out and make it into sort of more of a road racing car. It's mostly for me to go practice what I do for a living. Mm-hmm. But
how do you get to practice that? Do you call up the airport and say, I need the runway for a minute? Or do you just go down to the local parking garage like we did when we were skateboarding?
No. Well, I own this building, and I own a building over on Irving Boulevard, and I keep the drift car over there, and there's a lot of times on Sundays there's a round trip between the two. No, I shouldn't say that. Nobody should ever do that. You should never do that sort of thing. There's small kind of country clubby racetracks, like small racetracks
like out there in Crescent.
Crescent,
a good
and
one.
that's my buddy Moses, who's a stunt driver as well and a race car driver. The guy who talked me into going to NASCAR, he has a shop out there, and he actually lives at the racetrack.
Oh, nice.
And he has a car out there that he can drift to. A car set up for that.
Are there any restrictions on you? Like if you were to get a ticket for road racing, would the union be like, you
no,
got to strike? You know, if
Oh,
that
wait,
happens
well,
again, then you can't.
Oh, you
be
mean
a
the
stunt
Screen Actors?
driver.
Well, I mean, it's,
whatever.
The union that I'm in is actually a guild. It's the
Guild.
Screen Actors Guild. Anybody that's on camera is in the Screen Actors Guild. No. But that being said, because I don't mess around. You know, I don't go really.
Well, I'm not saying that you do. I'm just wondering if there's more scrutiny. Like if you have a CDL.
Well, if you do CDL, yes. But here, I'll answer to. If you go do stupid shit and you crash. If I went out and jumped in my drift car and I went and wrapped it around a telephone pole, other stunt drivers would know that and stunt coordinators would know that. And in an old school way, they'd be like, "Hey, he's an idiot." In fact, there's a guy that I know something like that has happened to. But the CDL, I think you can only have 2 tickets and they take your CDL away.
Yeah.
If I don't have my CDL, then I can't drive on camera because TV commercials and TV shows and movies, for their insurance, their stunt driver who's driving a big truck that needs a CDL has to have a CDL license. And if I didn't keep my CDL up, if I lost my CDL, then I wouldn't be able to drive on camera. So yes, there's a yes to that answer. I can't.
There's
be
no
an
like
idiot.
stunt driver card that they would take away.
No, there is no certification, no matter what these people think. Your friends would make fun of you, I guess. Also, I've said this before, I don't really want to take my insecurities and take them out on the open road out there. You know what I mean? Because really, if you have to drive like an asshole out on the streets where, some guys, your mom or your grandmother driving, if you're driving like an asshole out there, it's really your insecurities that you need to prove to something. I don't need to prove anything to anyone out there driving down Irving Boulevard,
Gotcha.
or driving up the 101 in LA. I'm going to work. I'm going to buy a pizza with a cute girl, or I'm on a date, or like I said earlier before we were I have hot rod cars. Remember I said this earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I have cool cars, but if you don't drive them slow, the girls can't see how cool your car is. You know what I mean?
See you driving the cool car.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know who the hell's driving the car.
Being
They're
an
like,
asshole.
And then people are like, well, who's that asshole? And that's why I say, I don't take nobody wants my insecurities out there on the road. And also, I'm a stunt driver. I shouldn't be like wrapping a car around a telephone pole.
No.
And I ride a motorcycle most everywhere, as you know. I mean, and as you were saying earlier, I need to be focused. I don't need to be doing any stupid shit. I do have one bike that I can take to the racetrack if I want, but I'm ridden it forever. But I have that Ducati. But all my motorcycles that I literally ride, are all old Harley Davidsons that are hand shift and have drum brakes. I'm not out there riding crazy, man. I'm just trying to get from point A to point B, enjoy life. And even I don't drive my Roadrunner very fast. Not on the street. My hot rod truck, the 65 truck, I've raced it. I've drag raced it, but try not to be nobody wants to be an asshole.
No. I was just curious as like how they, like a race car driver on the street,
I don't know any race car drivers. I don't know any professional race car drivers that drive like an asshole.
Yeah.
None. I know assholes that say they're race car drivers that drive like assholes on the street.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I know none of the people I know that race professionally drive like there's no need for it.
Yeah, because they get to do it out there.
I mean, I want to. Well,
I guess that's what I was like when I was asking if you don't race anything now. I'm just wondering if there's like other ways to feed that itch. I mean,
I don't really have the itch because I go drive every day.
Yeah, you get to do that.
I like another calming thing. I like going out to the racetrack with my drift car and goofing around with my buddy Moses or any other friends at the time. I say him because he's the one that I usually drive with.
He's one out here.
We have fun. Something, breaks on the car. We have to fix. We're just having a good time. Mm-hmm. I miss racing motorcycles a lot, but I do realize that I'm getting older.
Yeah.
I
got to race. That's what I'm fixing to go do here is pick up my race chassis for my next race. The Mint 400.
The Mint 400 is a desert race, correct?
Yeah.
and you're racing in a desert. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Look at you being a badass.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, man. I wanted to build a bike last year that I could go like adventure riding. Like one thing I've been doing a lot of is riding in the dirt, you know. Like I got started with my kid, got him at 50, and then I rode the 50, and I was like, oh yeah, dirt bikes. Like, what have I been doing, you know? And now I've had a big itch to ride in the dirt a lot. So last year I was going to build like a bike to, you know, that could go off road, and building it with a Sportster mainly because it's cheap and easy, and I wanted to show people that they could do it. And then I went to a hooligan race. And then I just went full hooligan racing last year.
Just went all the way, right?
And then so I'm like, well, I'm going to do what I wanted to do last year, and the Mint came up. They did it last year with motorcycles for the first time. So I was like, well, fuck, I'll build a bike for that, and then I'm going to take off and hit South America.
Well, I mean, that sounds adventurous. That's cool.
But
I know, I mentioned his name, a guy named Chris Palermo who raced a Sportster in kind of a motocross sort of race.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I saw pictures. It was a day in the dirt thing. A lot of stunt guys do it. I mean, every year that it's ever happened, I've been working then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Palermo's out there on a Sportster.
Was it a built Sportster? I guess. Like it wasn't just a.
I mean, I didn't. When he told me about it, I thought it'd be a little more,
a little more built than it was.
Yeah, than it was. But I mean, he was out there. He wasn't. I guess. You could say he was killing it.
Yeah.
Palermo's a good guy.
I just want to make it through, like, you know, I'm doing it with a friend, Bear from Old Bike Barn. And, you know, I told him the first thing, I'm like, dude, first off, I'm building this bike so that I can go ride it other places. You know, it just happens so the Mint's coming up, and it's like a good deadline. And I'm not going to win. I just want to survive and not beat the shit out of my bike, you know, like. Yeah. And I say that, but once I get to the starting line, I'm going to be like, fuck everybody, I'm winning the race.
Yeah, I know, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Once you get up there and you're like, oh, I don't want to win.
I don't want to not win.
Like, you came here to do something, right?
I always try and take it easy until it's actually time to race, and it's like,
man. Well, you know, I don't know where life will go after, because I don't know. Most guys that are older drivers, they still get called for this driving and that driving, and younger guys put them in the, you know, kind of back marker cars or whatever. And I figure that's what'll happen with me. But I would like to spend more time in the shop building. I don't know if it's building stuff, saving old cars and motorcycles from the clutches of people that ruin them.
People like me. Put late model transmissions on them.
Like, oh my God. I think Aaron Finnan, you know Aaron Finnan?
Yes.
I think he came up with this because I was, you know, I'm always fixing some motorcycle, some Harley frame that somebody has chopped, and somebody wants it to be original. And he's like, you're reverse choppering.
Oh yes, I got a call about this. Somebody told me about that.
Yeah, so I think that's me. I think I want to be the reverse chopper guy.
You are the swap meet guy, huh? Yeah, you and Oliver both like to hit them swap meets.
Yeah, so I want to just. I think when I retire, if that's whatever, if I'm not being a stunt driver and driving all these car commercials, I want to just like try to save this stuff. You know, save these old cars from 22s and airbags, you know what I mean? I want to save these cars from being molested. I mean, some of what I see happens is vandalism, man. It's not like I don't think it's customizing it.
It's taking it back.
Yeah, I want to keep
taking it back. What about like chop tops? Like I took a class from Jesse Miller a few years ago, and it was just a metal shaping class. Like I just wanted to learn how to work sheet metal, and I learned a lot. I learned enough to like think that the sheet metal I could buy in a magazine was way too cheap. You know, I'm like, fuck, you can buy it for that. Like, I know what it would take to make that. You know,
well, but I have no problem with people. I guess I don't. A chopped top looks great when it's done right.
Yeah, so that's so like part of his class was him like telling the history of why people did this, and it was just really eye opening to, you know, like they're really just. So like what you see that comes out of the production line is just that. Like they had to make it so that the production was easy. And then the chopping started with people like wanting to really slim the look and create like a more aesthetic view.
There are custom cars that are just awesome.
Yeah.
But, well, I mean, there's probably, in my eye, there's some that are completely off. I believe that if you're going to do something like that, change a car that much, or a chopper if you want to, a motorcycle, you have to nail it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you miss by a little bit of if you do some shitty work or some, leave off a couple washers or mix match this, or just, it doesn't take much to ruin it.
All my shit's ruined in your eyes. I already know.
Probably.
Yeah.
No, I'm busting your balls, man. But if you nail it,
yeah,
it can be done right. Now, there's so many people out there trying to do this and not nailing it that I don't really want to get involved in it. I've chopped the top on a car, I have done some custom work. I've done a lot of custom work. Actually, the front part of my Mercury is pretty custom, but that was a junkyard car, when I started.
Yeah.
But I think as I get older, I really am appreciating what came from the factory. I don't know, there's not enough of this stuff left. How many 1965 panheads you see that look like they did from 1960? They're just not there.
I don't know. I was at Mika a couple weeks ago, and there's a lot more than I thought there were.
Somebody found them.
Yeah, dude. Have you ever been there, man?
No, man.
Just as a viewer, I obviously. Well, I mean, honestly, if I'd have known how much some of those dirt bikes are going for, I might plan ahead next time. But just seeing all the bikes in one room, it was better than any museum, any bike show, anything I've ever been to. There was like a 1919 Excelsior next to a 84 CR250, and then there was just everything.
That's cool.
It was so
I
cool.
love that sort of thing. But think about it. That's like a Mika auction. That's not everyday world. So there's how many of those motorcycles were actually made that have all been done in by my buddy Ed Miller at Satan Cycles. Which is funny because Wilbur, the guy who was his friend, that was the mechanic guy who's still alive, Wilbur is like, he is mad at himself for chopping all that stuff. He's like, I don't know what we were thinking. We made all those choppers in the 70s and the 80s, and
if they would have just sat on that junkyard, and just done everything to save all the motorcycle parts where they were at.
And Wilbur is like me. He's going to every swap meet trying to dig that stuff back up. He's like, man, why did we ruin all that?
Yeah,
and I think as you get older, you have such appreciation for periodness, but period correct stuff is good too.
Yeah.
Oliver has that one chopper that I painted and did the front end on. It was a really nicely done bike built by somebody famous, if I recall right, in the first place. But
that shovel head with the K model front end on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I did that front end stuff, which actually it's a lot of different pieces put together for that front end to make that front end. Because finding the I made that lower triple clamp to fit the bike. That was some of the hardest thing I ever did to make that happen because we couldn't find the way to do it. But and I painted the gas tank, and there was a couple other little things. So I didn't really build the whole bike, but I remember I did the gas tank and the front end. Everything on the front end I did. I believe that's a nice chopper,
Because you did the front end.
Man, I just said that wrong. Now I sound like an asshole, right? No,
painted the tank.
But not because of my paint job.
Yeah,
a little bit because of the front end. But actually, that bike had a front brake anyway. I'm a big lover of front brake. But it was done right. Whoever built the person that built it did really nice work on it. I mean, just top.
Somebody
notch.
out of Colorado, right?
I don't recall.
Remember, I think I was like in a show class mag or a dice mag.
It might have been or something. And I don't recall who built it. It was really well built. I'm going to say, hey, I appreciate things that are done right. I shouldn't have used a bike that I've had something to do with, right?
What about the gold chopper, man? The one that he found.
I hate that motorcycle.
Oh, my gosh. It's so great.
I think I worked on some little part of that. It doesn't have a front brake, and you know how I feel about that. That knucklehead thing you're talking about?
Yeah.
That is a death trap. I thought I was going to die literally just riding it, I thought it was going to explode into a million pieces.
That's the beauty of those bikes, is because they might.
They might. There's no doubt about it. That thing is a piece of shit, man. No, if it had a front brake, I would like it a little bit better.
I mean, it's definitely probably got some flop. You know, like I've never sat on it, but I can
you
see
can't
it.
even
But
hardly
it's just like
hold the
once
thing
it goes
straight.
past like 12, 15,
No,
12,
like 8.
Yeah.
He has a knucklehead that I think used to belong to Stag. Why is this
Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that bike had a front brake, I would really like it.
That's a fucking cool bike.
Yeah, that's a cool bike, and I like front brakes.
Yeah.
But that bike is pretty cool. And I shouldn't say. I almost said another Oliver's bike that is that brown bike that I built. I mean, it's a chopper kind of.
The brown bobber
thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had to have a lot of. I stood my ground on a lot of things on that motorcycle. I mean, I thought there was going to come to fisticuffs, Oliver and I on that bike. But no, I'm mentioning things that belong to Oliver because we know.
Wait a second. Before we go any further, let's just go back about a little over a year ago. The motorcycle chase.
Oh, man.
Dude, how was that? I mean, that was like...
Epic.
That's like, what when I think of the Cannonball and the way they do it now, I'm like, fuck, that's just
people
lame.
following them around with a truck.
But, dude, the chase was like, I was so jealous that I couldn't be more a part of the first one.
And as we talked, the guys that got me in drag racing, the original guys that got me in racing, Big D Cycle.
Okay.
One of those guys was my roommate back then. His name's Keith Martin. They run the Cannonball with some Nortons, and I mean they have a full machine shop.
That's the British shop here in Dallas, right?
Yeah, the British bike shop. He calls me up one day and he says, "Hey Jeffrey," because he calls me Jeffrey. Some of my old friends call me Jeffrey. He's like, "Jeffrey, I'm about to build this bike and I need you to bend some exhaust tubing for me or something." And I'm like, "What is it?" He's like, "Actually, I need to talk to you about this because I think you're going to need to do this." And I'm like, "What?" He said, the guys that put on the Cannonball. I'm like, "Dude, I'm not taking 2 weeks of my life off to go run spend all this money and all this stuff." It's funny you brought this all the way back. Yes, I have raced recently. I didn't even think about it. So he says this. He's like, "I got to tell you about this." I was like, "All right." He's like, "I'm going to send you some information." So I think he texted or emailed me some information. And I read this thing and it says pretty much what I read into it. It's you and your bike and your parts and your tools and no chase vehicles.
That's it.
And I'm like, no chase vehicles. So, and there's everybody on this thing has to fix their own bike, And I read the rules and another rider can help you, but he's going to bone himself, because there's. So I called Doughboy back. Keith, his name's Keith, but we call him.
Would you call him Doughboy?
Doughboy, that's his nickname.
Okay.
So I call Doughboy back, and I'm like, "So what's the story? Is this a professional race? Is there any winnings?"
Yeah.
And he says, "Yes, there is." And he said, "Nobody is sure how much they're going to pay out the winner because they're going to see, how it goes and who they allow in the race."
Yeah, they don't want that to be the reason.
Yeah, but there's money. And I said, "There's money." And he's like, "There's money." And I'm like, "Man,
you're telling me money's what got you to go in?"
I don't know, man. I was, it's not money because I don't operate on money.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's a professional race.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
All right.
This whole...
It wouldn't be somebody like me just showing up on their chopper.
It's like people are going to take this shit seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you had to get, I guess you had to get approved to be one of the riders. Racers.
So they're taking like applications.
Yeah, they were taking applications.
Yeah, so could show up.
Yeah, and I mean they were pretty strict about what kind of bikes were going to show up and what was. And so I'm like, man, he's like, send in an application, and I'm thinking, I got work to do, and this is going to take a long time. It's going to cost money, and I haven't raced anything in a long time. But man, it just sounded.
Yeah.
And then the side note, I hate long distance riding. I don't go out and I don't want to ride from here to wherever. I've ridden to Sturgis in the 80s. I don't want to do that shit. I did that shit when I was like younger, man. I don't want to be riding all day long, but I'm like, this is intriguing to me. And the fact that it's like, I'm going to build this motorcycle and do this. And man, I started building that motorcycle. And Wilbur from
Satan
Cycles, I didn't have all the parts to build the motorcycle. He and Maureen went and found me a 45 because by the way,
So this wasn't a bike you already had?
I didn't already have that bike. No.
Oh shit!
And I didn't have a bike that was eligible for it because it had to be 48 or older. And the best I could do is 49, I guess. So it had to be 48 or older. But then the way, it has a handicap, which had a lot to do with the points. So I was very concerned with this. And I really I did a lot of research on how I could do the handicap. And I realized.
Because you were trying to get points. If you're building a bike, you're like, money. You're going to build it to get you the most points.
And so I decided that a 37 Harley Davidson 45 cubic inch was
quad cam.
Yeah.
Did that cams have anything to do with it?
No.
Was it displacement?
The 37 meant it had an oil pump.
Okay.
Because that meant it was a WL. And before that would have been a
I'm talking
VL.
about the points. Like the points.
Oh, points.
Did they go off the cubic inch or the cams or like
I'm
the cylinders?
I'm sorry. I missed you on that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. The point system was, for those people out there listening to what we're talking about, the older the bike, the more point you got. You could have up to 20. You could start the race with 20 points, and every mile was a point. So this is how you won the race, right? So if you had a 1930 bike that was under a certain cubic inch, you could have 20 points.
So lower cubic inch.
The lower the cubic inch, and the older the bike. Okay. So I went with the oldest 45 cubic inch Harley Davidson that had an oil pump because I wanted an oil pump, and then I read all the rules and I made my bike because a 45 would have half gas tank, half oil tank. I made 2 gas tanks so I didn't have to stop as much, and made my own oil tank and all that. So I went with a 1937 WL, and Wilbur and Maureen found me what I used for a frame. I found the cases. Because it was built out of all sort of stuff. They found a complete bike, but
that'd have been too easy.
Yeah, bike ready to go. Are you kidding me? So I just went through. I just thought about everything and just built it. And the funniest thing is I should have posted it on. Maybe there is a picture on my Instagram. I was so determined to have every tool I needed to do everything I had to do because I didn't want to get caught up. You know how big my toolbox is, right? I'd be the jackass that's out there. I need to borrow this from somebody,
Yeah.
So my tool situation was crazy cool. I saw some people who had some pretty good tool setups. And then as I was building the bike, if I had to make a spacer or something, I made 2. So I took extra and then there was guys that went out there with hardly anything, but I was over prepared, man. I was like, I would say I was impressing people with the way I showed up with my. I didn't win, but man, was I prepared.
That's awesome.
And that
See,
bike
now I do the same thing. Like if I make custom stuff on my bike, I make extra, throw it in the bag. There's washers, nuts,
you have
whatever.
to.
But now I almost I would say I have more respect for it, but and envy's not the right word, but I used to think very low of somebody who would travel without tools. But now I'm the fact that person is willing to just jump on their bike and go without anything,
I wonder what their thought is.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than
kind of risky
when you're with a couple guys and then their shit breaks down. And you're like, no, I have to fix that guy's stuff, and because I was, and everybody on the chase, because you weren't going to go 2,400 miles, and it was 11 days of racing. Because the one day you made a circle, they called it the prologue. You weren't going to go all that time without working on your bike. Nobody did. Not a 1948 and older bike. You're going to have to at least those bikes needed to be serviced. I had it didn't take me long to work out my service procedure. Every other day, I did this and every.
You have a log or
it was in my brain. I knew what I had to do. And some of the guys that I rode with, there was a few of us that kind of hung together a little bit. They were all riding 45s. And it was it was an every other day thing. And, my schedule would be just the primary chain, because 45s, you adjust the primary chain, then you have to adjust the rear chain, and you have to adjust, and then the shifter and everything is because the transmission moves back. So much work to just, there was these things you just had to do every night. And you'd get there and you'd be in this parking lot and it'd be raining or it'd be cold as hell or hot as hell, and you just had to do this service every night. And it was one of those things. I dug every minute of it and I hated every minute of it. Just so.
Well, that's the kind of fun. Like, there's two kinds of fun. Like, it's fun you enjoy in the moment, and then fun that it's not fun until like you're done with it and you get to look back on it.
Man, I wouldn't trade doing the first one of those for anything. And the fact
so
that I made,
awesome.
because there were some times that I'm like, man, I might not make this thing.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I don't want to be that guy that didn't make it, but then I didn't want to be, and this is the racer in me. You never want to be when you look at the results, you never want to be the guy at the bottom, which I've been. We've all been there. Yeah, but I was like,
that's why you don't want to be there, because you've been there.
Yeah, so I was, you're feeling good each day. You're clicking these days off and these miles off, and man, just doing it. And it was so awesome. And Oliver showing up at one of the, I think we're in Indiana, or Illinois. I don't know where the hell we were, and that was part of it. Seeing him when I pulled in that one, because you had a lunch stop that you had to stop, and then you had
because this wasn't like your normal crew of guys. Like, you're not part of the Cannonball scene or even the AMCA clique.
These were not my dudes.
Was there anybody on the trip that you knew?
I knew Doughboy because he ran it.
Okay, so he did run it. He wasn't building it for a customer.
No, he did build it customers and he ran it. So but
you can't be riding with like a Triumph. You got to ride with your Harley boys.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
No, he got to leave 15 minutes earlier than me because he had a smaller displacement bike. So he and I rode a little bit together a couple times, but we
you just blow right by him
I'm
every
trying
time.
to think, because I'm telling you, when I showed up at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, I knew one person out of 100 riders and everybody I don't know how many people were there. I knew one person. It was Keith Martin, my Doughboy.
Yeah.
I only knew one guy. I didn't, and all these other guys they had been cannonballers or had been, and everybody, and
it was like a family reunion.
Yeah, they were all like, "Hey, I haven't seen you since like," and I'm like, and I was all by myself. I mean, because most everybody
got Satan Cycles written on the side of your bike. They didn't even want to come shake your hand.
I know. Who's this guy that looks like Elvis Presley, man? So I got there and I didn't know anybody. I didn't know the procedure. And if you've raced, there's always the procedure. You should do this first and that. I wasn't locked onto the program at all, man. And
it's probably a little squirrely being the first year for them anyway.
It was, because they were trying to do their things. They were, and Keith was cool to me, and it helped out. But then he was hanging with his Triumph boys.
Yeah.
They were off on their own deal. I walked by a guy, and he looked, he was a tattooed up younger guy, and for a second, he said something like, "Hey, who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Jeff." He's like, "Yeah, I usually am a crew member on a Cannonball bike, but I'm going to run this on myself." And he was riding an Indian, and I was like, "Oh man!" And I was like, you know how you're like, this guy and I are going to be buds, kind of in a way, and we weren't besties or anything like that, but every time we saw each other, like, hey bud, hey, like, hey, at least we can be friends, you know what I mean?
He was on an Indian.
He was on an Indian.
So you were kind of like not making sure nobody really saw you.
No, it's cool. That poor guy, man, he had, oh my God, I think in the prologue, I think he cooked a valve and he fixed it, but he missed a day, which took a bunch of points off. And then halfway through, something fell off his clutch, and he had to fix that in the middle of the night. And I was just like, man, he was having a lot of problems, but he got it. I mean, I think he was at the finish. I saw him, but
awesome.
He was a cool guy. What
was his name? You remember?
Oh, I think his name was Sean. Really nice guy. I think he was from Ohio. I remember he's from Ohio. A lot of tattoos. Definitely,
Ohio.
That kind of dude, tattooed up, kind of cool. He was a nice guy. Wore Vans, what I ended up doing was somebody introduced me to this guy, and they're like, "Hey, this is this guy, Tribby." And I'm like, okay. And I didn't realize at first, because we had that prologue, so we stayed in one place for a couple days before we took off for the race. because you had to run the so many mile prologue before you took off for the race. And they introduced me to this guy Tribby, and he was on a 45 too. And I didn't realize this guy was a badass. He had like done the cannonball on like a Henderson or something, you know, and he had worked for Harley, I guess, his whole life. Maybe he's retired now, but also had a small shop on his own, did a lot of work. This guy, he wore those boots that came all the way to his knees, lace-up boots, you know. Very well fit, you know, fit guy, not overweight. And he had this bike, and then there was another guy who was with him, hanging out with him. There was a couple, but there was this one guy, and somehow somebody said, hey, this is this, and he's from Texas, and this guy was from Texas. I think he was from New Braunfels. And so he's like, oh, I've heard... He knew somebody else, somebody that's from here, AMCA guy, that said, I heard you were going to be on this race, that I should, you know, introduce myself. So his name was Rodney Sterling, and so he introduced him, and he said, we're going to ride together, him and Tribby and another guy. They were going to hang together, and then I realized, oh wait, everybody's like grouping up.
Yeah.
And here I'm on.
This isn't like a fucking solo race.
Yeah,
like everybody's...
these guys are grouping up, and what they're doing is they're like, you know, so they can kind of do a little help. And then really what I didn't realize the help was the navigation, because you're on the scroll.
Oh, yeah. Man,
You can bone yourself. And the guys that try to ride solo to try to haul ass, they bone themselves and like miss some checkpoints because they weren't on the scroll. And I'm like, oh, okay. So
that's where that cannonball experience came into play.
Yeah, it really did. And these guys were pairing up and grouping up and making sure that, you know, he had a spare tube and he had a spare this and everybody. And I'm like, and here's old Jeff, who I've got everything I could possibly need. I'm by myself, and I've never even worked one of these scrolls. I don't know. I didn't realize that this thing was a thing, you know?
Yeah.
And those guys took off because we left at the same time, and they just took off. And then I was out there by myself, riding in the rain, kind of hauling ass. The first day we went on the long part, I was hauling ass. I was by myself.
Did you have like stock gearing, or what were you cruising at? What was the speed?
No, I was really tall. I had the tallest gears I could put on that poor 45. I've been in the rain. I was running 60.
No shit.
Yeah, because it was cool, and it was, you know, I had really, really tall gears. My bike would just roll down the highway. It didn't do for shit in the mountains. Yeah. When I got the mountains, I could have pushed it up the mountain faster than I was going up mountains. But I had real tall gears, and my bike was the stock 45 cubic inch. I realized Rodney Sterling, his name's Rodney Sterling, his bike, he had a stroker in that thing. I'm like, that is not a 45, you know?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of guys that had little things. Those guys were really cool. I ended up, after the first day or two, I ended up riding with them a lot. And in the last days, we rode together a lot. We hung together. I had the one night that I had started having some problems, and some other people were like, oh, I'll help you. And it was kind of weird because it kind of felt like that was after they saw that Oliver, you know how this goes. Oliver comes to meet me, right?
Yeah.
At the last stop of about halfway through the race. And it was the one day that I started to have some problems. I had a kickstand problem, but this was some different problems. And all of a sudden, a lot of people wanted to be my friend because Oliver's there, you know? I'm like, these people didn't even know I existed, you know? I'm the guy that
followers are okay with Satan cycles, and I guess I can be okay with Satan cycles.
Yeah, so some people started to try to like, hey, I'll help. Because I was, during our last stop, where you have to be at a certain place, then you can go to the... So I started trying to fix my bike, and they're like, we're going to help. And I'm like, oh, hold on. And it was kind of a weird day for me, because it was great that Oliver was there, and Audra was there, and Aaron, and
getting to see some familiar faces.
And my friends, you know, oh my God, it was so good, because I didn't have anybody at the start of the race. And then during the race, everybody had people meeting them places. Yeah. You know, but everybody was there with their friends at the beginning. And so it was cool to see Oliver, but then people were kind of hands, kind of helping, trying to help me, and that didn't work out very good, because I knew that I had a problem, and I got over to the hotel. By that time, things were calming down, and there were some guys working, and there was this one guy, man, damn, he was a nice guy, an older guy, had done cannonball stuff, if I recall right, was retired. I think he was riding a knucklehead, but he was like, you seem like you're having some problem. And I was like, yeah. And I'm thinking, man, everybody's trying to help, but this guy didn't care who Oliver was or me. And he's like, what's up?
He didn't even know who Oliver was.
He doesn't watch TV, And so this guy was so cool to me. And I was like, this is what I got. And I told him everything. And he's like, hey, man, well, let's look at this. And he's like, go ahead and look at that real quick. And I did. And then, what happened was he kind of gave me this calming thing. And, man, that guy was so cool. He was just a good guy, And he was from Ohio, too, if I remember right. So he helped me out a lot. And I got back in my groove. And then I started riding with those other guys. Tribby, the guy from Harley, and
New Braunfels.
The guy from New Braunfels. And there was another guy in there for a little while. And he ended up he wrecked. But it was an experience like nothing else, man. I mean, I don't know. It's just such an experience. And
riding those bridges down the Keys.
Oh my God!
Isn't that cool?
It was hot. Is what it was. I hated the Everglades.
What month did you guys do it?
I don't remember. September, but it was hot. And the Everglades were a nightmare. It was so hot in the Everglades. I thought I was going to die. I was riding across the Everglades, and I thought, if my bike doesn't overheat.
Did you guys go down Gator Alley?
Yeah, and where it's just 2 lanes.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking to myself, my bike is going to overheat. I'm going to be stuck on the side of the road, and some 18-wheeler is going to take me out because there's no shoulder. It's just swamp on both sides. And I'm like, I'm going to die out here. And then I'm riding along, and like these signs that say, like, watch out for gators. I'm like, fuck, there's probably snakes and alligators.
What about the pythons and panther signs, dude?
And then there's like panthers. I'm like, there's panthers out here. I'm going to die in this place if my bike. I'm just, please, bike, don't break. Please, for the love of God, don't break. But I got through there, and once I got to Miami, I thought, what could go wrong from here? I mean, I've just made this on, but the bridges were cool. I liked riding. There was this one sketchy ass bridge we had to ride. I liked some of the sketchy shit we did. Other people hated it. My buddies on the British bikes hated it, but it started to be. And I'm not, I don't drink or anything. It started to be like a party when we got to Miami. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, because the ends and sides.
Oh my God, it's so close.
And at that point, like on those trips, like you're almost okay with your bike breaking because then you could just like not have to ride it anymore. You could just keep going along.
Man, yeah.
Well, I guess not. They had some chase vehicles, right? Like maybe that weren't.
They had a
support.
There's no support vehicles, none, because that one. But if the people who put the race on have what they call the sweeper truck.
Yeah, the sweeper.
We call it the grim sweeper.
Yeah.
So if because they leave at a certain time, if they get to you on the route and you're broke down, you have a choice. You can get on the sweeper truck or they go by you. And if they go by you, you're out of the race because you've already lost your points. But if you don't get to if you don't have a way to get to the next beginning of the race, you can't start the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay, so they could pick you up. You could technically fix your shit
and then go. You'll lose your points because you didn't
for that day.
Yeah, you didn't get your mileage for that half a. I don't know if they do it half a day or how they do it, but you didn't get your mileage, but you can keep racing.
Gotcha.
Which people did. There a lot of that happened, but man, nobody wanted to be on the sweeper truck. No. But so that was this. We could talk for 12 hours on. I mean, that was the experience, like just meeting people. And what I didn't realize what happened is everywhere you go, there's people that join along, like guys riding old 60s.
Oh, they just see you guys and they just jump in
know
line?
about it, and they're like, hey man, you're and I met a guy that was riding a 65 pan, which is my favorite.
I had a dream of doing that with you guys, like just coming in
you
at
can
some
do
point.
It. People do it, and it's like fun because you see these some of the coolest motorcycles to me. You know, like just some of the coolest bikes were the bikes that would join in. I met this guy, this skinny older guy, and he had his little wife with him, and he had this cool Western shirt on. And I'm like, I love that shirt. He's like, I have 2 of them with me. I'll sell you one. And I bought this guy's shirt and I wore it. I think I'm wearing it in those pictures of me and Oliver together.
My gosh, that's funny.
Michael Lecter, is that his name?
Michael Lecter, yeah.
Lecter, yeah, he took. I'm wearing it because that guy. I got his shirt. I'm wearing his shirt, and it's kind of like this thing. You're like, and when I stopped for gas in the Everglades, I got the little magnet that said "Watch out for alligator crossings." I had that on my bike, and everybody's sticking stickers on their bikes, and it just becomes a thing. You're like, You're just having a good old time.
Well, there's a bonding that happens when you go
Yeah.
through hardship like that, you know?
Oh,
Riding
my
that
Lord.
far.
Yeah.
I did Daytona down to Key West last year. And, man, it was
That's like
great
150
ride.
miles or something, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's it.
What is...
No, it's like 4 hours north of Miami.
Daytona. Yeah, Miami is
yeah.
100. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, what's funny is Miami was like the halfway point, like mileage, but maybe not mileage. Anyways, once you get down to the Keys, like I went in March, so it was spring break, so there was so much fucking traffic on those bridges and everywhere, and it's 2 lanes.
Yeah, I know the bridges
all the way down,
and it's so crazy how on the ocean you are when you're on the Keys. Like you're like, if the ocean was to rise, there would be no Keys.
There's nothing, dude.
So I'm not really sure about
The
the whole ocean.
cemeteries down there,
Yeah.
they put the bodies, they just stack them, like they don't bury bodies down there.
It's crazy. That was an experience. And Oliver the whole time was like, "You got to go." And I missed 2 car commercials while I was doing that, and it was killing me because I'm like, man, I'm missing car commercials that are like the people I normally work for. And I kept thinking, should I just not do the race? I'm like, no way. I built the bike.
Yeah.
Oh, and Wilbur built my motor. Satan
Oh,
Cycles.
Wilbur did.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it made the 20 because I was going to build
So
it
that's still what he's doing now?
a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
He's retired.
When
but he
Milburn
has-
calls him up and says, I'm going to race cross country.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell. He was so worried that thing was going to explode. Because I was pretty much 50-50 because I had talked to Wilbur about it, and I thought, I'm going to build it. I'm going to build the motor. I was going to build everything. I fixed the frame. I welded the frame up. And I thought, you know what? I don't have time to build everything. And if there's one thing that I should have someone else do, would be a flathead motor. I'd never built a 45. I'd never been through one or anything. And I kind of like toyed with it. I was like, no, I better find the time and build it myself because I want to build every single part on this bike. I mean, I laced the wheels. I want to do everything. I painted this stupid thing, but I realized that time constraints for me, and I kind of wanted Wilbur to build it.
Yeah.
I wanted. That's why I got painted Satan Cycles on the side of the bike. Wilbur built that thing,
That's
man,
awesome.
I mean, he wanted an update. He was so worried that thing was going to grenade.
Oh, dude, the last guy that built my motor, the first month, every time I talked to him, every couple days, did you blow it up yet? Don't make me look like an asshole. Don't blow that motor
Well,
up.
I mean, it's weird. It's sort of like a double-edged sword because Harley motors, it's not like an automobile motor. There's so much balancing and truing, and you can put it together and it not be perfect and it run.
still run great.
You know what I
for a
mean?
while.
Yeah, but I mean, to get it where you can really flog the shit out of it I put.
And then even when you do get it like that, there's a chance that something will still go wrong.
Yeah, something else. The oil pump is going to. The motor in my 71, that my first big bike, my FLH that I've had since the mid '80s, it blew up on the way to Sturgis once, and now it's a different motor. It's STD cases,
Yeah.
I put it together, if I recall right, but then I was really worried about the truing and the balancing, so I took my flywheels and stuff to Brown's, and Jesse Brown, I guess David's dad,
Yeah.
trued them up, and then I stuck everything together. And man, that had to be 1988.
And it hasn't been apart since.
I still ride that motorcycle.
that's
I
awesome.
still ride that motorcycle today. I mean, that means Jesse Brown made sure, because I put them together and I trued them, and I'm like, man, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
remember I moved them, if I remember right. I don't remember what the story was, but I remember them kind of bouncing around in my car. I'm like, there's no way I got it right. There's something wrong. So I think Jesse Brown did it. But, if that happened in the 80s and it's 2020 and that bike is still running.
Well, that's the thing is they can run on some wild tolerances, but for them to run a long time and everything wear out evenly, it's
Jesse Brown must have knew what he was doing when he trued up, because I'm pretty happy with that, because I have some other bikes that sound like they're about to fly apart. Shit that I worked on.
Oh,
Yeah.
man. That's awesome.
Man.
Well, I think that's a good way to shut this thing down, dude. Brown Cycles, man. That's
I mean,
where it's at.
They're still the real motorcycle shop. I mean,
The bikers, what does they call it?
where real bikers shop or something.
Yeah, where real bikers have their bike worked on.
David Brown is good to go on my bike. You know, when I moved to Texas, the first I didn't move back to Texas, I should say, because I had already lived here. But when I moved back to Texas, I jumped on my shovel and I drove back here to try to work out what I was going to do for the first place I went, because I looked in some yellow pages.
Really? You went down to Brown's?
I mean, literally, I got off my motorcycle, walked into Brown's Cycle. The first human being I met in Dallas, Texas was Gary Brown, and the second was David Brown. And they asked me what was up. I told them I worked at a car dealership. I had been working at this motorcycle shop. I was probably going to get a job here. And Gary Brown's like, I know a guy has a motorcycle shop that's looking for somebody who's a BMW shop. And he's like, I'll give you his number if you're going to live, And I'm like, I'll look him up. But I ended up working at the dealership. But the first two guys I met were Gary Brown and David Brown. Because my exhaust pipe started to fall off. Some bolt flew off and I needed it, and I bought it from them.
Nice.
T-Mobile.
Was that when they were still in Deep Ellum? Or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was in the 80s, man. Yeah. There
That's
it is.
awesome. It's awesome. Hey, thanks for having me over.
Thanks for...
I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you, sir.
Sweet. Damn.
What is happening, y'all? It's Nick with Knives Made by Nick's Rock Talk. And, yeah, man, it's the Rock Talk again. It's the Wednesday of the month. So, I got some stuff going on. And one of the things I'm going to do, so I'm going to make some t-shirts. I'm going to do an exclusive one-time printing of some shirts. I had Robbie Campbell. He's at St. Beautiful Robbie on Instagram. Dude sent me a really, really neat design with one of my tornadoes, some foliage around it. It's just a neat design. It looks really cool, and it's going to look great on a shirt. If you go to my Instagram, look back a couple of posts, you can see what that shirt's going to look like. But what that's going to do is I'm going to try to raise some money and get Jolene fixed up and get her ready to do all the shows this year and all the traveling I'm going to do. And all the money I've been making, I've been putting into my business. Not that I'm making anything hand over fist other than a fucking callus. But, yeah, so I'm going to try to raise some money, get the motor rebuilt. I'm going to have Boston Billy do that. Same guy that built Dan's motor. I think with the deal, I'm going to do a pre-order on the shirts, and it'll be a raffle also. So I haven't decided exactly yet what I'm going to give away. It may be a knife, or what we're going to raffle, I should say. But yeah, every shirt you buy gets you a raffle ticket. And then we will do a drawing and choose a winner for that. The pre-order is going to go for like 2 weeks, so make sure you're following at Knives Made by Nick on Instagram so you can keep up with that. And man, good old Kentucky boy, Justin Kelly. Dude, man, I made that post about getting Jolene ready. He hit me up, Hang 'em High Customs wants to help me out. Justin Kelly, thank you so much, man. Justin's going to help me out. He's going to help me get some deals on some parts, get the stuff I need so that I can get her rebuilt and ready to roll. I want to put crazy miles on. The wife and I figured out my schedule for this year, at least for this. I booked out all the shows and scheduled it all out, all the shows that I want to do this year. And there's a bunch I can't do. I do have bad news. Full Tilt Boogie and Run to Raton are going to be the same weekend. So I hate to say it, but I'm staying out of Mosquitoeville and I'm going to the mountains. Man, I've been to Run to Raton every year, and I can't miss out on that. It's just such a good show. JP Rodman rocks. They have such a good time with that. I know. I'm pretty sure Terry's going to go to Full Tilt Boogie this year. So if you if you're going to be in that area, go around Full Tilt Boogie. Go catch Terry and say howdy. Man, I talked to Craig Martin today. High Seas Jerky, owner, proprietor, and head MFer. Man, we had a good conversation. I had some questions for him, and thank you, Craig. You really helped me out. You answered my questions, and it was great just kicking back and then hollering at you for a little bit. I am getting a knife ready for this month's giveaway, and I'm gonna try to get that posted up here quick, and I'll have more about that later. Man, I told y'all I got an acoustic bass, right? So I've been learning listening to nothing but Geezer Butler isolated bass tracks, learning bass lines, playing all of Geezer stuff with no pick, playing with fingers like Geezer did. I learned Nativity in Black just right off the bat. I was like, okay, that's the easy one. I'll get that one down. And my 14-year-old now, Hines, comes in. He's like, teach me to play bass. So I teach him that. Dude can play it. Now he plays Chokehold, one of FTW's songs. He plays saxophone. He started playing piano, pick up a guitar, a bass. That kid's going to do a bunch of cool stuff with music, so that's been fun to watch. So, speaking of music, FTW played, it was January 31st, the day after my birthday. Played a show at Division Brewing over at the Grau Record Store. And Terry and his wife came out, and after the show, well, actually the next day, Terry called me and asked me, did you look in the back of your amp? And I was like, well, let me go check it out. And when I did, Terry has given me his Bowie knife, his personal Bowie knife. It's one that he made quite a while back. I mean, it's been around for a while, and it is the knife that inspired me to build the Huckleberry. When we were doing the show, Sharp Shit, we had it here one day. He talked about it, and it just made me think, I had a lot of big knives, had a lot of regular size knives, small knives, but I didn't have any like mid-size Bowie, and I made the Huckleberry. Still carry it. It's still my favorite knife. But yeah, man, thank you, Terry. I just can't even come up with words. Like, I'm just so honored and stoked to have this knife. I'm glad that you trusted me with it and let me have it to where, and even you said, you'll get to see it again. We're partners, we're brothers. But thank you, dude. I will cherish that. I absolutely love it. So thank you again, brother. So let's get into some music for today. Besides talking about Rick Springfield last week at rehearsal, we also talked about Randy Holden. Randy Holden was a guitarist. He was best known, he was on Blue Cheer's third album, but he only played on tracks 7, 8, and 9 of the album. The A-side was all done by their previous guitarist, and then Randy did the B-side, the last 3 songs. So, but he did tour with them for a year. But Randy was also a painter, and one of his bands, and I'll get to that, the band actually we're going to play today, was one of the earliest examples of doom, and just heavy. And it's funny because some of the bands he played in were like Sons of Adam, the Fender 4, the Other Half, and he played in Blue Cheer. So the bands that he played in kind of show a progression of where psychedelia rock, where California went from surf rock to psychedelia to kind of like doom, heavy metal, and his albums even show that. So when Randy played for the Sons of Adam, he opened for the Rolling Stones and was blown away by Keith Richards' guitar and his amp setup. So he started messing around with distortion, and I'm sure that probably caused some friction with his band. He left, pretty much every band frustrated because the music wasn't going. I guess the way he didn't want it to go, or the band didn't want it to go the way he wanted to go. Either way, it wasn't working out for him. So he left. Well, he left Sons of Adam. He played in the other half, and a kind of a psychedelic garage band. The same thing. Left that band. That's when he recorded with Blue Cheer, track 7, 8, 9 of their third album. He toured with them for a year, but again, ultimately left. It's funny, you should go to YouTube and listen to the tracks from side B of Blue Cheer's third album. It's some interesting stuff. I don't want to say it's great, but it's interesting. So Randy finally he formed a band with a drummer named Chris Lockheed. And Chris Lockheed played drums, but he also played the keys. But he played the keys and the drums at the same time, live on stage. And so they started a band. And it was Randy Holden, Population 2, and like Roman numerals, Population 2, for, it was just the two guys in the band. So drums, keyboards, and then Randy playing guitar. And while he was doing that, and this is my favorite part of this whole thing, is Randy got a sponsorship deal from Sun Amps and got 16 200-watt amps. So, FTW's Wall of Sound and the big bands that do, the complete just wall of sound, just amplifiers. It kind of traces back to Randy. And so thank you, Randy. But this is Randy Holden, Population 2, first track on their album. It's called Guitar Song.
You heard him. He's selling some shirts. He's got to rebuild his motorcycle to get him back on the road. Jolene. Yeah, he's dude, it's an Evo motor. He probably won't have to rebuild it again for like 2 more years at the rate he goes. Go help him out at Knives Made by Nick on the gram. And, dude, I can't thank everybody that helps this show happen week after week. You guys are the shit. Lowbrowcustoms.com. If you need some chopper parts, you need to go to Lowbrow Customs. They will get your shit to you so fucking fast. You won't believe it, really. You really won't believe it. They're the shit, man. Old Bike Barn, dude, Bear, Motrcycle Sherpa, Tim from Gigacycle, Red Gap Moto. Who else? High Seas Jerky. There is a Danger Dan code. That'll get you 10% off. I can't believe I left that off at the beginning of the show. Who am I? Really, who am I? I just don't want you guys eating my fucking jerky, dude. A guy named Corey Collins has been fucking capturing some rad photos recently, and I want to thank him because I am super stoked about having some of this shit documented in film. Maybe it's not exactly film, but it's close enough. This is Danger Dash Talk Top signing out.
Let's get on.